Going along, please feel free to follow on YouTube. If you would like to participate, please do so through Zoom. If our Zoom is interrupted for any reason, we may have to recess the meeting and start over. If that happens, you'll need to re-enter the meeting and you will need to get the Zoom link and password from the agenda, which can be found online. Thank you. Now all rise for Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. And we will move to our regular citizens to be heard session. Is there anybody here in the chambers who'd like to come forward and make themselves heard? Aaron.
My name's Aaron Lindbergh. I'm also on the Planning Commission, which I really wanted to tell you guys, thank you for appointing me to that. I've kind of gone into a deep dive. I read about housing issues across the country. I think a lot of our issues are kind of mirrored in California. And I was just thinking about some points that we had on our last kind of group, the group meeting, which I really liked because it was a check to me to see where your guys' heads were at with some of the stuff and what's viable on that. Some of the things that I saw that I like, I think about this stuff as I drive around. Some of the things that I saw was, Mary, you had mentioned the democratic process. Being involved in making upzoning choices and stuff. One of the counter arguments I have seen for that is it is the few blocking the many when that happens, because we have people that live here and are established and can come here and be like, kind of put pressure on you guys to turn down things, or that threat can loom even before it enters into consideration. And I see some places have been like, we got to take more of that public away, because we can all, I think you guys have all run and we can all agree that, public or housing is one of our big issues, but no one wants it in our backyard. And I think that is one of the issues that you can kind of be like, well, how much can we tie everybody's hands and everybody just, takes one for the team. Even I see that as one of the counter arguments to some of that thinking. Another thing I'm also concerned about, because I see that, I'm a working class guy, I work for an hourly wage. It's great right now if you have housing, and it's kind of a sweet deal. Like my housing status is like 7 years ago. I live in that time frame, and wages have really gone up. So like one of the things I see is that with that, when we're talking about HDHO stuff, like they quoted me in the paper saying really concerned about subsidizing businesses' housing. And so like that's why I was like, if we expand that HDHO or AEH definition, it's like I really think that I can see wanting to always pushing wages, make sure people get paid well, and not necessarily having a system where it's like, oh no, you get in one of this, and it puts a downward pressure on wages. So that was kind of the couple of things that I'm concerned about, and wanted to kick it over to you guys, because you guys are ultimately the deciders and stuff about that. So those are kind of my 2 thoughts on that. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate your point of view. Anyone else in the chamber like to come forward and be heard at this time? Is there anyone on Zoom who has tuned in to make a comment? Okay. Looks like not. So we will move on. And our first presentation is the Moab Museum. And I'll welcome Forrest Rogers, the museum executive director. Thanks for coming, Forrest.
Well, thank you, Jacques. As many of you know or don't know, Jacques is an ex officio member of the museum's board. And because of the longstanding relationship the museum has with the county, we felt it was really important to have a voice from the county who can also feed back to the board, to the commission, what we're doing. Greg Halliday filled that position for a while, and we're delighted to have Jacques with us. I'd like to clean up some old business if I may, before starting my presentation.
Wait,
Or-
yes, you're gonna stand, it's totally fine. We stand at the podium just so the mic picks you up.
Okay, I'll do that briefly.
Or you may seat as well,
Or you-
Forrest. It's your it's your choice.
Getting my aerobics.
All right.
So, thanks, Quinn. To begin, at the very beginning, the county invested in the museum when the museum raised money for what it was known as the Dan O'Leary building. At that point in time, the museum board, nonprofit board, committed to paying rent for $1 a year in order to repay the county for its facility support and the like. I was horrified to discover that we're in arrears. And I've got the receipts. So I'm going to give Gabriel a personal check for $17 that reflects 17 years from 1987
Wow.
to 2020. I've got copies of those receipts, so you can keep them for history.
All
I
right.
think if I may, I will step to the mic.
Absolutely, Forrest.
See what we're doing.
Whatever you're most comfortable with.
There is no late fees on there? You got a couple bucks.
I got $5. I can't calculate how much that was for a year. It's the intent, right? Thanks for giving us some time today to give you some updates on what's been happening at the museum. And I want to just start by saying that what you see here is the result of this image, and this storyline is what started the museum in 2017 when the museum decided that it was going to build a $50 million natural history museum on the banks of the Colorado. And you can imagine what the response was from people in this community. The board was smart enough to take a step back and ask what the community wanted. And what the community said was, don't build a building, build an organization. Am I moving that?
No. It keeps going on its own before you're ready, so that's.
Okay, you know what?
Time on it.
Pardon?
I think it has time on it.
It does?
Yeah.
So I don't talk forever. So can I just let it go?
Yeah.
I just hit it once to start it? Okay. So the museum took the challenge to reimagine, rebrand. That's not the timing I had for it. So I'm just going to talk. One of the things people think about museums is you got exhibits, right? What we did is update the exhibits of our objects in a more contemporary style and fashion. And some people looked in the door. I think it was Sina Howard looked in the door and said, wow, this looks like an Apple store. And it does. It's bright, airy, and it's much more open. And you can see the objects. Another responsibility we have is to take care of the collections that we've been accumulating since 1958. And we've secured a grant to construct an environmentally controlled vault that'll take care of our most fragile, our perishables, and other organic objects. One of the challenges a museum has is knowing what it has and being able to describe it and find it. This is an example of an object that had been displayed for years without really knowing anything about it. Fortunately, George Rathbun walked in the doors last summer and said, I was part of the two who found that object, and he brought this this description of it with a negative that you can't read, but it identifies the location in general. And that got us started on researching the authenticity and the heritage of the basket. And we've determined that it is a prehistoric basket, probably Ute. And it's now an object that we can tell stories with because they didn't come with it. One of our other responsibilities is to conserve objects, both the ones we have in our collection, but also ones we borrow. And this is an example of a conservator at work. Conservator has also rebronzed the Charlie Steen's boots, the ancestral load basket, and the urbanic map, which I will speak to later. We also have to find out whether what we're told about the object is in fact true. The tag on this object said it was from the Pinhook battle. Well, actually, an archaeologist volunteered time to do the research. It's actually a Springfield 1881 carbine. It's got several parts to it that are aftermarket, if you will. And so that's something that we have decided we're going to do some more research in and to see if we can geolocate where it was found and see if that might have been within the range of that battle. We're also spending time now telling stories beyond the museum walls, but more broadly through southeastern Utah. And so we had an exhibit that showed in late 2022, ran into 2023, more than 100 Hopi Katsinas. And what really made this a powerful exhibit was not just the visual stimulation of the beauty of the work, but we actually had some of the Hopi carvers there doing demonstrations. So they could talk with visitors about the spiritual and sacred nature of the Katsina in their culture. It's one of the things we have to do to sustain our business is create future museum goers. So we have been working closely with youth serving organizations in the community, not just groups like the Girl Scouts, but with the Beacon Club and with the charter school. We're having a harder time really engaging with the public schools, and just primarily because teachers are just at their wits' end. They're spread so thin and need to focus on the kids in the classroom. Extending the museum beyond the walls is one of our priorities. After a request from state parks, we developed and constructed this exhibit that's in the visitor center at Dead Horse Point State Park. And it focuses on ranching up in that region and gives us a chance to tell some stories that are less known. That there actually were women ranchers who actually ranched. We have a short little piece in there about the Black cowboys of the region, because 1 in 4 cowboys in the West was actually Black, African-American, most of them from the South after the Civil War. Art doesn't necessarily always stand alone. So we try to combine that with other opportunities for people to engage. This is from a workshop that Brian Laidlaw presented for people who were inspired by Everett Roos's block prints and his poetry and prose. We know that Charlie Steen didn't discover Moab, but sometimes people think the museum says that. So we're making a real emphasis with our history programs interpreter to tell stories of the region from the 1880s to the 1930s. I mentioned that earlier. And we're also trying to connect the past with the present. George Henry Krause was not only Moab's first weather observer, he was titled the Dean of Utah Weather Observers, maybe best known in this community because he donated to the Moab Athletic Club the property that is now the ball fields. The museum has over 100 oral histories, almost all of which have been digitized and many of which have been transcribed. We did an exhibit that closed two months ago that actually tells the story of Moab with quotations from those oral histories that go back to 1937 up to last month, with responses to questions that our visitors ask today. So they're getting almost 100-year-old responses to questions that people are asking today. Every Thursday at 10 a.m. on the Grand County lawn outside the museum. Stephen Zacharias leads the tour of Moab's original business district, Main to 100 East, Center to 100 North. We just installed the annual quilt show. This beautifully combines the 2022 theme of polka dots and the 2023 theme of flower power. And prescient, it still is recognizing the strife in the Ukraine. International Heritage Week begins on Monday, May 15th. We have programming through that week, including Navajo churro sheep, which are considered critically endangered. We'll have some demonstrations. The sulfur Spanish colonial horses will be there on Thursday with the backcountry horsemen. And then the Reds from the dugout will be there to talk about the Criollo project that they're doing. Our staff participated in the annual sheep shearing that's done at Cunnington Farms, and that's a prelude to the exhibit will open in June, which is focused on the tradition of weaving in the Navajo culture. I'll end this part of the presentation with a reminder that much of the cost of a museum is never seen by the visiting public. The cost of storing, preserving, and conserving the objects is pure overhead. Can you stop it for me? Thanks, Alicia. And of course, the staff required to conceptualize, design, develop, and install exhibits. So we have engaged this professional conservator for a variety of objects. And you see here an image of her cleaning and repairing one of the 20 sections of the urbanic map. And that is an object that people are eager to see the museum reintroduce on display. So we're going to be launching, this is just a warning, we're going to be launching in late summer, early fall, a fundraising initiative to raise the $20,000 necessary to design and construct a high quality display case so that it's not vulnerable to touching and to objects that get dropped into the map itself. And that's something that we will do through our own museum fundraising efforts. I'm going to try to, I don't have a tool with which I can kill it. So thanks, Alicia. A couple of things about the business of the museum. The county has historically, based on a memorandum of understanding that was signed in 2007, when the museum was no longer a department of the county, but the governance and staff were outsourced, if you will, to the not-for-profit board. So we have a memorandum of understanding with the county, and that provides funding for the mission-critical positions in the museum. So our budget, 73% of our budget comes from the county appropriation, which this year is a little over $112,000, and our operating reserve, which we invest so it can continue to grow slower now than it did a year ago. And those two sources of funds almost exactly pay for the staff of the museum, the professional staff. So we are beginning to be much more committed to and aggressive about fundraising, building our membership, because that's a primary metric for the degree to which the community finds value in the museum, and also donors to fund special projects like the urbanic map display case. So I'll stop there. I appreciate the time. I know that check won't bounce. I made sure of that with the transfer this morning. So I'd answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Forrest, and that's a great way to adapt to the speed of the slides going by. Maybe we'll have to adapt that paradigm to keep everybody on the straight and narrow when we do presentations from now on.
And I do have copies of our 2022 annual report for each of you. So if it's okay, I'll give them to Alicia.
And I just want to say it's been a pleasure being on the board of the museum. And if you guys haven't been in there recently, it is Forrest and the staff is amazing at this point. He's got such a great staff over there. And the museum just looks great. It's a pleasure to get in there whenever I get over there, and just so much appreciate what you've done for the museum. And that's a big part of the community, Forrest.
And people,
And Mary?
people who have taken that walk on Thursday really rave about it. I want to go do
I
it.
need
They
to be
say
there as
they
well.
learn, they learn so much, and a lot of the people that have done it have been are longtime residents. So I got it. I'm gonna make sure I do it before it gets too hot.
Well, we need to get Bill out there to check the accuracy of the raging part of the story.
All right. All right, thanks. Any other questions for Forrest? We will move on. We don't have any department or agency reports, so we're up to approval of minutes. And that, I don't know if you guys read through them all like I did, but that took a while.
I read through them 1%.
18 pages of minutes is definitely the longest of any minutes that I remember since I've been on.
I would move to approve the minutes of April 18th and April 24th as presented.
Thanks, Evan.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Clapper and a second by Commissioner Hadeen. Any discussion on the minutes?
I'd like to comment just historically. Gabe has done an amazing job with our minutes when I became a member of the commission. At times we'd go months without getting our minutes, and then when we got them, they were just snippets. And so to have such quality minutes is greatly appreciated, and in a timely fashion where we can remember what happened at the meeting.
It's an important public record. It really
Yes.
is.
And you're doing an exceptional job, so thank you.
Good job.
Yeah. All right, so I have a motion on the table to approve the minutes. All those in favor of approving, raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. We're on to ratification of bills and general reports. Ratification of bills, and I usually write down the amount, and I didn't. So if someone wants to make a motion with the amounts, I would entertain a motion, Mary.
I move to ratify the bills, total bills of $1,425,677.41. Total payroll of $3,089. $3,089. $913.05, excuse me. And total bills and payroll at $1,815,590.46. Now that was really poor.
like
I
it sounds good.
stumbled through it.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner McGann and a second by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion of bills and or payroll? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of ratification of bills, raise your hand, and the motion passes unanimously. I'm on to commission member disclosures. Any members of the commission have anything that they need to disclose about any of the items that we're going over today? Looks like not. So
I do want to disclose.
Go ahead, Mary.
We're talking about fire commissioners or for the and areas, and my husband is a member of the fire commission.
thank you. Okay, we will move on to general commission reports and future considerations. And I'll start at the end. Kevin, are you ready to go with that?
Sure. So I think the main meetings I went to in the past 2 weeks were like it was a future land use plan open house, and also the HDHO meeting that I think almost all the rest of you were at, and those will be discussed other times. So beyond that, I don't have anything to report.
Thanks. Evan?
I was out of town for some professional development, so don't have a lot to report on. I've been catching up since then and mainly focusing on the film commission and kind of where we're at. And I would be willing to take that third seat on the upcoming meetings if that's unless anybody wants to arm wrestle over it, but all right, that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, Evan. Bill?
Well, I'd like to start off first, just talking a little bit about the airport, because there's so much going on in social media and everything, and Tammy gave me a few bullet points I thought I'd share in this report here. I think there's people that are under the assumption that we're losing air service completely, which is not the case. Was one of the biggies that she had in here I wanted to address a little bit. And then, of course, people who are looking at Salt Lake City for their medical needs on a regular basis, there's a lot of feedback negatively about losing Salt Lake City. And, you know, there's people that are upset about losing Denver as well, but they're for a little bit different reason. And there's just no way to change the fact that we're losing the service to both Denver and Salt Lake City. So we are stuck with the move to Phoenix in order to try and keep up our employment numbers, which is a big part of the reason that the Contour Airlines was discussed amongst all of us and chosen. But there's a lot of people in the public that still don't understand that need to move there. And if we drop below that 10,000 number, which could very easily happen if we chose the 8-passenger regular prop service, why then we lose a huge amount of a budget. I can't speak to it. Mr. Baird probably could, but I know that it's in excess of $1 million that would certainly curtail issues out at the airport. And it would basically move us back to the airport similar to what Green River has. And I don't think that anybody in the public wants to go that direction. So Tammy just asked that I update that a little bit, because I think she's getting a lot of negative feedback that,
definitely.
that isn't, you know, that she's doing her best to deal with. So that's kind of outside of my report, but I wanted to touch basis on it. And I think it's certainly an important one that the public understand that there's things that are outside of our control that are forced. Is not a decision of Tammy's or this board, other than to try and keep service of some sort here.
And I think that's a super important point, Bill. Yeah, that it is kind of greater forces, national level forces that are causing most of this. Yeah.
I talked to Tammy the other day because I got 2 or 3 phone calls. We will have our regular service until the 30th of June, correct?
Yes, and I don't
And
know
then we
actually
might-
when that cut off. She was trying to get it extended.
Yeah, well, she said, what she told me, the 30th of June is when they will most likely, SkyWest will get a letter saying they need to provide service until Concord, you know, the other services in line, and that'll probably be around October. But that's not known, but it is known that we will have service till June 30th.
Correct. And just on my end of it, I have spoke with Romney's staff as recently as today, as well as John Curtis's staff. And I have dealt also with Mike Lee's staff, and they're all aware of this and working on trying to help with some of the problems that exist around the SkyWest service and those portions that we're losing, but they still don't change the immediate need that we have of signing with an airline. Contour.
Isn't Uinta in the same boat as we are?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bernal is.
Bernal.
Yes.
Same thing, and they're looking at flying also to Phoenix, which
That's an even bigger.
that's gotta be tough for them that close to Salt Lake City. So,
Sure.
so
Yeah.
that's outside of my report, which, like I say, I just wanted to help Tammy out there a little bit. I know she's fielding a lot, so.
Thanks for the clarification, Bill.
I did attend the HDHO workshop as well, and we've all been through all of that. I also attended the Moab City workshop on water.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend that people go and watch that. I thought it was a very well put together report by both Carly and Chuck. And they had some people on on Zoom. I believe 2 lawyers that represent the city of Moab and Mark Stilson was there, and it was incredibly well put together and well ran, and a lot of very good information. I think Chuck was talking way past my lifetime, 50, 60, 70 years out, and some of the projections that they have, but I thought it was pretty educational. So that was a good meeting over there. I also attended the UAC board meeting, very little there. We did, as usual, just approve minutes and talk a little bit about some of the appropriations that happened around the state. And UAC is discussing possibly a dues increase somewhere along the line of inflation, but they don't have anything out. And it was just kind of a preliminary discussion to get it out there. I also attended the UAC Legislative Management Conference. And there were so many different grants that it was made clear that were available for different things. And I've reached out to the airport already. There's one for solar and charging stations. And I know Bill Howley, I think, has already been working on that, but I could just pass on additional information. So that's kind of the end of what I've got.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Trish?
Let's see. So I also attended with you guys, the Joint County and Planning Commission. I attended the future land use evening where we did some scenarios with individuals, and there was probably 30-ish people there. So, nicely attended. They keep doing those workshops with citizens and developers and realtors. And so I think that's lucrative. I started, but I'll have Mary kind of finish that off. I went to a portion of her Economic Development Board meeting where we were talking about the spending of approximately 750 to 850 in economic diversification funds. And so I'll have you kind of finish that off because I was just there and then Mary stepped in. And went to the Mosquito Abatement Board meeting last night. They are fully staffed. Steve, as a director, is just doing an amazing job. They have a new biologist. They are setting traps and beginning testing. Obviously, it's probably going to be a really big year, and they know that, and they are on the ground and working really hard already. They do foresee themselves kind of probably going over budget, but they have monies in place for high water years. So we know that is probably going to be the case. They are certified now to go into the UMTRA site, also to the non-contaminated areas, and they are there treating those areas. Also, UMTRA is actually paying for product, and they're just providing boots on the ground. So that's about it.
Awesome. Yeah, it does look like it's gonna be a bad mosquito year. I live on that side of town too. It gets pretty gnarly when the wetlands flood. All right, Mike.
Attended the HDHO meeting with everyone else. Very productive meeting. I liked seeing all the people and all the input there. The other big meeting that I attended was the CNHA meeting of their board, but it was attended by many of their partners, also BLM, National Parks, Arches, etc. Heavily leaning in that meeting was their need for CNHA actually purchased housing and their need for more housing already. They have 19 total rooms currently, and every one of the partners is already in need for more of that housing. They're going through the same struggles that everyone else is. So that's pretty much my update.
All right, thanks, Mike. Mary?
Okay, I had attended the Canyon Country Partnership. I will try to shorten this as much as possible. It's a long meeting and a lot of information. This year, the BOM extended their grazing permits for the area for the first time because of the snow. They couldn't get to put cows, so that was the first time. They've had a meeting with the King Creek Development Company about the area on the BOM providing access to a private property. The travel management planning is on. buttoning up for the Labyrinth Gemini Bridges Travel Master Plan. And they're working with Grand County and Kevin Walker on that. Their claimed Lisbon Valley Copper Mine submitted a proposal to develop lower Lisbon Valley. The proposal includes open pits scenarios, so would need an EIS if the plan is completed. Working with the company to provide potential third-party and NEPA contractors. Lithium, just exploration is big. That there's a lot going on in all of the counties that this BOM range area takes care of. And they're continuing to update their maintenance and recreation sites. The Division of Forest Fire and State Land. Fire season will be interesting. Yeah, they're not sure. We'll have a lot to burn, but whether, so it'll depend a lot on whether or not we have a dry summer. So it could go either way. We could have a real easy fire season. They are working diligently at areas to get people to build protectors around their house so that if there is a fire there, and their house is somewhat protected. They're doing that in the Pack Creek area, of course, and any place in LaSalle or any place that people have that. They have 2 new helicopters, and they're very excited about that. The Division of Oil and Gas, they talked about the mine too. Staff was, then they talked about that closure at Floyd of the leak, the gas leak flowing from an oil well operated by Rose Petroleum 5 miles off of I-70. The sheriff responded. Rose Petroleum brought in specialists in well control management to assemble and require equipment. It's going to take some time to clean up. Our state parks, Aaron is retiring. If anyone knows Aaron, he has retired and will be leaving. Statewide, they're starting their.
Dead Horse Maria?
Dead
Right,
Horse.
that's right.
You know him? Yeah.
I've met him a couple times.
Yeah, and so he's retiring and moving back east. They're doing a long-term strategic plan for the state parks. Construction is underway for expansion at Green River. And it's a big deal. I guess everybody's gearing up for the solar eclipse on October 14th. They're expecting a huge amount of people to hit our national and state parks. I'm trying to glance through to make sure I get everything. They have hired a new, they're offering stargazing shows up at Dead Horse Point. And they're having up to 50 people show up to participate. Wildlife, they've put in bony tail chubs in the upper Colorado basin. And these are the endangered species, and they put them in the Price River and the San Rafael. Shed antler, they stopped that you couldn't go and collect antlers. That will end on May 1st. So it's
It opened yesterday.
Yes,
I know. People are already out.
People are out. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. And you never knew how big a deal it was. The BLM is, the BYU is partnering with them to do why we're losing so many fawns to fatality. So they're putting in mothers so that they will know when the fawns drop. I said it correctly.
Yeah, they put a GPS device in vitro in a pregnant doe. Yeah, when they capture them in the winter to test them for just fat, how well they're doing. If they're pregnant, they put a GPS device in vitro. So when that is born, it comes out and they automatically know that that fawn or calf has dropped. So it's pretty crazy.
And so they're going out because we are having a lot of death. The death rate amongst the fawns is in the Book Cliffs, especially, is really high with our elk.
Yeah.
And this was a very tough year for all of our animals. And so deer permits and elk permits will probably be limited this year. The pronghorn are down 25%, which is a lot. And I'll go to the next one. Oh, and they talked about wildlife overpasses and underpasses and how we need more of those in many areas and how that's really helped right there between Blanding and it's really helped. So I called it Suicide Alley when you went over Soldier Summit. And I mean, we need something there. It's not okay to have that kind of death on our highways. National Park Service challenge staffing and time to entry. They talked about that. I think there's some stuff we'll hear about later. And Wild and Scenic River. Patty Trapp is retiring. Her last day as superintendent of Grand Arches and Canyonlands and Home and Weef will be June 30th. Presslands exchange is still going on. Probably the thing that affects Grand County Hoorah Pass, they're having a lot of issues. Hoorah Pass from the OHV users. And so they're working to try to figure out ways to maintain and protect that road because it's falling apart. And they are working, you probably heard it, and you may have even got people contacted about the Sitla land they want to sell in Castle Valley area above their watershed. So I think this could be a future consideration for us to talk about and decide if we want to take a stand on that. I know this, I'm getting lots of calls from citizens from Grand Castle Valley that are very concerned about their watershed. I went to the UMTRA meeting. We are at 13.4 million tons have removed. So we're 83.7% moved, which is very exciting. The mill was down. You notice the mill is gone. It was taken away, no problems. It took months to plan how to do it safely, week to get rid of it. They are starting to take the autoclaves out, which is a big deal. They've expanded the cell in Cisco and they've restarted the groundwater pumps that keep the ammonia out of the river. And then the economic development meeting, I think it's going to be on the agenda later.
All right, thank you, Mary. And as for myself, it was pretty quiet into the month of kind of all my meetings got front loaded to the beginning, but I did have a TSSD at Thompson Water District meeting that was pretty interesting as there were 20 ERUs that had been designated to be allocated and more than that who wanted them. And Bill and Stephen were able to come up with me and help facilitate that discussion, which I really appreciated. And after a couple of hours, those ERUs were allocated in a manner that seemed relatively fair. So that was a big deal in Thompson. And also another thing that came out of that meeting was that the board voted to approve if someone's tap, if they decide to turn their tap off for say a couple of months in the winter or whatever, then the board would charge them half of the going rate to keep that tap current so that they could turn back on when they came back. And that's something that most, I think, water boards do. So it was nice that Thompson adopted that. It'll help keep the cash flowing up in Thompson. The only other thing I have is I want to promote the Moab facelift that came out of Trail Mix. That's happening this weekend, the 5th and 6th. And I would encourage everybody to get going on that. There's going to be a lot of cool activities affiliated with that. You can register for the facelift at yosemiteclimbing.org/2023 Moab facelift. And if you can't remember that, you can go to the Discover Moab website and look for that event. And there's a link to that registration. There's going to be a social gathering on Friday from 5 to 7 at the Mark, where you can also sign up for the various projects that will take place the next day. And then the next day, the volunteering for those projects that you signed up for will occur from 8 to 3. I think there's 6 different sites that kind of go along with the different Trail Mix user groups, such as mountain biking, horseback riding, hiking, etc. So that's going to be super cool. And then there's a great social hour and after party with some live music and a DJ at the Mark from 5 o'clock until whenever that ends. So definitely check that out. I'm going to be out there and I think it'll be really fun. Again, Moab facelift. And that's all I have. So yeah, Mary.
Sorry, mine's been so long. It's only every other month that we have Canyon Country Partnership. So I wanted to mention something about our workshop we had with the Planning Commission.
Oh, yes.
I thought it was a great beginning, but I really think we need, for future considerations, I think it's the beginning.
Yeah.
And we have to systematically and not just think it's going to happen. We need to systematically get together, discuss it, make sure we move forward so that it's a good program for working people. It's not for helping. It's not a program designed to help low income. It's designed to help our nurses, our teachers, our work. That is what it was originally set for, because there's nothing out there for that group. And I mentioned that I was working on the homeless grants. There were 48 million requests and only $23 million to give away. Every facility except for Grand County was cut by a half, and we were cut by a third. So we got the free health clinic, the Moab Culture Center, and Seek Haven all got 2/3 of what they asked for. And I want to make a shout out to Rihanna, because I believe she is the one that deserves the credit for this, because she has been going to those meetings and really pushing that we're an island, that it's 125 miles for homeless people to get any service, if you're in Salt Lake, you have the help of other people close by and other workshops. So I think it's her effort. And then I advocated that Grand County got the least cut.
Right, and that's Rihanna from the Multicultural Center.
Yeah, did
Thanks.
I not say that?
No, thanks, Mary. We all know who Rihanna is, but some folks might not. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll move on to our elected official reports, and I see that Sheriff Wiggins is with us on Zoom, so I would start with him. Jameson, welcome, and we'll take a report.
Can you guys hear me okay? I'm on my laptop on the side of the road.
All right, we can hear you and see you.
Okay. So March, sorry I wasn't able to attend. March was a very busy month for us. Our numbers from March, we had 1,894 calls into our dispatch. We had 783 911 calls. The deputies responded to 802 calls for service. The deputies were also targeting speed enforcement with extra shifts paid for by the state of Utah. So we were able to do about 473 traffic stops. Most of those were targeting speed. We had 44 arrests. We served 78 pieces of paper, and we had 4 search and rescue calls. Some of the things that I wanted to talk about for March was we had a swatting call, a hoax call in regards to a school shooting. The sheriff's office, along with Utah Highway Patrol, the Moab City Police Department, the park rangers, Moab Public Works, the fire department, EMS, we took it seriously. About 15 minutes prior to that call coming out, I'd received information that it was a possible fake call. It was happening up north. Luckily, there was no real shooting, but something to take away from this was the city had a school resource officer inside the high school right as the call came out. So he was immediately able to tell us that it wasn't real. After the shooting, we had debriefs with all agencies that were involved to discuss things that we did good, things that we need to be better about. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything, but I was very proud of everybody's response to the school. We placed all schools on lockdown because we're afraid of a kind of call that gets all of our resources going to one school and then it happens at another school. So we're just going to shut all schools down if something were like that to happen. But it's a good reminder that, going forward, we definitely need a full-time SRO within the sheriff's office. We have a part-time right now. It's our bailiff. And when he's not in court, he's in the schools to try to help with school safety, to make sure that the kids are safe and the teachers are safe as well. Then we had the wellhead incident with Rose Petroleum. That was really bad timing as it was during Jeep Safari. A huge strain on my office as I had to staff deputies at both ends of the roads to shut the traffic down. As the wellhead was right next to the main road that went into Ruby Ranch, it trapped hundreds of campers down in Whitewash. DPS and their helicopter happened to be in town for Jeep Safari, so they helped us out. They took deputies in immediately to Whitewash and set up a roadblock. So kudos to DPS and their helicopter. From Rose Petroleum, they paid us for our services out there. I billed them for every one of our deputies that responded to that, so that was nice of them. We utilized iPause during that. Hopefully everybody received it. I've received good feedback that iPause worked. Moving on, we've Cora, our emergency manager, and I are planning on potential flooding in Grand County. She's doing a great job. I have to give her kudos. We've been testing our alert sense system, and alert sense is different than iPause. Alert sense is something that you're going to have to sign up for. What we're finding is that people that have been signed up in the past for alert sense need to go back in and check to make sure that their information's correct. It's not going to be pushed to your phone like iPause. You literally have to go in and sign up for alert sense. And then I was asked to talk about our phone tree that we implemented for our dispatch. Our dispatchers are inundated with phones, radios, opening and closing doors for the jailers. The phone tree was implemented to help relieve the stress and the pressure on the dispatchers. They're responsible for a lot of things, and the phone trees that a lot of the other agencies in the state of Utah have phone trees in place to direct the calls to the appropriate destination. And I would just remind everybody that if you're calling 911, something's probably wrong and you need help. That dispatcher is there to help you, and they're hardly seen or recognized. They do get a lot of flack from other, I would say, agencies and people that have an opinion, but they're tasked with a lot of stuff inside of our bubble, inside of our jail. And so I just want to give them a kudos. I think they're doing a fantastic job. Even with that phone tree being in place, April's numbers, we received 4,700 calls into dispatch, and 1,044 of those were 911 calls. So I want people to understand that when a dispatcher gets a call, they're having to answer that call, but they're also having to listen on the radio to officers, troopers, deputies that need help. And then at the same time, they're the eye in the sky for the jailers and opening and closing doors. So they got a lot of responsibilities. So that's why that phone tree was implemented, was to help them out. For April, we had 1,072 calls that the deputies responded to, 361 traffic stops, 41 arrests. We've served 60 papers, and our SAR calls jumped up to 19. So it's our busy season right now. And from our numbers from our task force, I'm very proud to say this again, we're at 432 pounds of meth that we've seized in Grand County with our task force, 37.5 pounds of cocaine and 23 pounds of fentanyl. And we're working on having a great working relationship with Emory County's task force, San Juan County's task force. So a lot of exciting things that are happening within the sheriff's office right now. And that's all I've got. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Thank you, Sheriff, very much. It sounds like it's been super busy. It's a busy season for everybody, but especially you guys. Anybody have a question for Sheriff Wiggins this time? All right, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
You bet. See you guys.
All right, I'll move on to our County Attorney Stocks.
Just briefly, I went to the Utah Prosecution Council training up in Salt Lake. That was a 2-day event focusing on criminal prosecution, and they had a little bit of information about the civil portion of things. There's going to be some updates coming from our office, working with Mallory to update some of the ordinances with the legislature. They've changed some things, and we have to update some things to become into compliance with the state statute. On the tail end of that, I was able to stop off in Thompson Springs, and that was really exciting. It meant a lot to the people that got the water, and so that was great to help them. And next, with the Planning Commission, there is a lot more to discuss, and I would encourage you folks to really dig into the wording. If you're going to go through and change definitions, staff's going to need so much help to know what it is you guys want to talk about or not talk about. I agree with Commissioner McGann that it is just the tip of the iceberg, and so that's going to need to be fleshed out a bit more. So if you folks have questions about that, please reach out to me, and that's pretty much everything that I have.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. And our clerk Wojtek.
Thanks, Jacques. I also attended the UAC Legislative Management Conference. It's always a great opportunity to network and get together with the other clerks in the Lieutenant Governor's office. That, you know, they're onboarding a lot of new clerks and their staff. So there's a lot of great sort of introductory presentations on all the myriad duties associated with the clerk and the clerk auditor role. Did a little deep dive on the latest rounds of bills related to elections and sort of what that means for our ongoing processes. I think I'll plan on, before we head into the August municipal primary, I'll plan on giving y'all a little maybe overview of what elections are going to look like in 23 and what some of these bills, you know, how that might be, you know, introducing certain changes and, you know, what the public can expect. And also, let's see, I'm planning on preparing some action items for you all for the next meeting, which includes the election interlocal agreement with Moab City to run the municipal elections this year, as well as a new print vendor contract for elections, which is a bit of an unexpected circumstance, but we've been hard at work in finding a solid new print vendor and hoping to have an agreement in place for you all to approve for next meeting.
Thank you. So we are going to be running the municipal elections this year.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And will it still be ranked choice voting, or are they moving away? They're moving away.
No, we don't have the ability to process ranked choice voting ballots, and so we'll do a regular primary and a general. So the primary election will be held on August 15th, and the general election will be on November 7th. And you know, we'll be working closely with the city recorder's office. You know, but ultimately we control the voter registration database. So, and the city recorders don't have access to that. So we maintain that role of administering elections in municipal years. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Gabe. Kevin?
And the election related legislation you're referring to, is that this past session or coming up in the next section?
Yeah, this past session is what we, even more specifically, House Bill 448, which included a lot of revisions and new items.
All right. Thanks, Gabe.
Did
Yeah.
the audit go smoothly?
What's that?
Did the audit go smoothly?
Thanks for asking. It went very, very smoothly and wonderfully. So, yeah, just to continual follow up with that. But yeah, I think it's a good relationship that we're developing with Larson and that we started with them last year, and that seems to be no concerns were expressed. So all's well. I was able to go up to UAC during audit week, which seemed unthinkable a couple months ago. So
great. Thanks, Gabe. Commission Administrator report, Mallory.
Yes, I will be quick. Let's see, we did work on something you'll see later in the agenda, the special event ordinance, which is very minor, but we can talk through that item when we get to it. Another thing hopefully coming your way is I'm working on a grant application for the Indigent Defense Commission, which is the annual thing I seem to do, but don't have much success with. So we have gotten money in the past. It's just been difficult to implement with finding the right structure. But we might be asking them for funding for somebody to manage or implement the system that would not be a county employee. So that would be completely grant funded. Alternatively, or additionally, we would be asking for defense resources, and that's just a pot of money that's for public defenders to get expert witnesses or certain kinds of medical or mental health assessments, so forth. And it would also pay for any attorneys that have to come down or I guess go up to get here to meet with clients or for court. So that would be completely covered. It's not a hard grant by any means, but it's the process of implementation. That's the hardest part. So you might see that at the next meeting. And then something to point out or maybe to put out to the public, it sounds like there might be a workshop at the next meeting for
HDHO, right.
And then Jenna, not to put you on the spot, but is there maybe an intent to apply for ADOs at the workshop at the next meeting? Okay.
So I think the question was, will that intent to apply come before the commission as a workshop before the May 16th meeting?
Okay, I was just looking off the quarterly calendar. So that one sounds like we'll have more information one way or another the date. And then there will be an Open Public Meeting Act training on May 23rd. So I think Quinn sent you all the invite. And for anybody that isn't able to attend that, it will be something you can complete online.
I've already done.
Send out that as well.
And that's for all county like board members, et cetera, right? Special service districts, yes.
Is the first half of the meeting going to be the update on what was changed during the legislative session, and then the second half, the Open and Public Meeting Act, or since it's been COVID, have they changed that?
Well, it's actually being put on in-house. I think that's actually the norm around the state, is that it is presented by county attorneys.
So I've received a copy of the training from some of the contacts up north. And so we've got a slideshow presentation, and I'll go through any updates that we have as well.
So you would do the,
I'll be doing the presentation. It's the county attorney's tasked with enforcing OPMA as well as the Attorney General's office. And so I'll be putting on the training.
So will it be separate if you've already gotten your Open and Public Meeting training? Can you come and hear about the, it's not gonna, okay.
Yeah, it's going to be open to everyone that would be that excited to come watch OPMA. I don't think we're going to have security or ID checks or anything, but it's going to be at Star Hall, so there'll be enough space for people to come.
Great. Thanks.
That's all that I have.
All right. Thank you, Miller. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Do we have a time for the beginning of the workshop, just so the public knows?
We don't have a time yet. I would anticipate it being probably 2 or 2:30. Yeah. Quinn, do you have anything to add? All right. Chris, did you want to add anything at this point? Our strategic development director?
I'll just speak with my.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, it's just after 5 o'clock. We're moving on. So we are on to our general business action items. And start with item number 1, our 2023 Moab Summer Marketing Campaign. And I'll welcome August Granith, our Economic Development Director.
Yeah, Mark, love communications online.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. There you are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And Mark will have a slideshow presentation.
All right.
But I'll get us started and then turn that kind of presentation over to Mark. So contextually, this is the kind of follow through on $100,000 that was budgeted towards paid media in the 2023 budget. This went to the commission for pre-authorization in January. Commission opted to have this come back with a little bit more fleshed out plan. Travel Council Board has reviewed kind of priorities and plans for this budget item, and looking at some of the numbers we've seen over the last 2 summers, July and August in particular, kind of underperforming compared to typical averages. And, noticing that that's largely due to the lack of the slow return of international visitation to our area, amongst other factors, wanting to prioritize messaging focused on kind of weather resilient activities. So starry nights, dark skies, activities in the evening, arts and cultures activities in the evening, kind of water-based recreation during the day. Targeting this very slow period we saw kind of last year between the July 4th holiday and Labor Day. There's some statistics attached to the presentation or in the attachments that somehow got compressed so they don't look very good or that readable, but the takeaway is that between July 4th and Labor Day, Arches has a lot of capacity. They weren't selling 100% of their days with the time entry system, and relative to historic norms, it was pretty low last year. And so that was kind of the Travel Council's recommendation to our department. So we had Love put together, a concept media plan, marketing strategy, and some creative collateral that would go along with that. Those are all attached. I think the other piece that's tied to this would be potentially for today's discussion today and potential action at a future meeting is potentially increasing the budget for this particular ad campaign. But that's not kind of on for actual action today. I should kind of make that clear. I think that's all I have, and then I can turn it over to Mark to kind of present what Love has put together. Love is also prepared to kind of speak to generally what additional budget could support if acted upon in the future. So I'm happy to turn it over to Mark unless there's any initial questions.
Yeah, let's hear from Mark.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Pleasure being with you today. So we've put together this initial budget for $100,000, and what we're looking at here is a May start. So, early as possible. As August has stated, we're looking at we've developed some content that's been being reviewed and for consideration. And so as we look at the summer campaign, looking from May going through August, we have 2 strategies here. One is using a partner called Sojourn, another one Storygize. And so the goal here is to prospect people to visit. Let's move my screen here a little bit. With the budget, we're focusing on drive markets. So it's easier to convince locals to do like weekend getaways. We're looking with those with drive markets. So looking at northern Utah, Denver, Colorado Springs, Vegas, Boise, Idaho Falls, Phoenix, and so forth. And so to do that and to drive these messages to these specific audiences, we're using a partner called Sojourn. And this is a great programmatic partner, like display ad campaigns and so forth, basically serving up these ads real time to specific websites where our audiences are, where they're searching. And so we're looking at using them for those display ads. And then also another unique partner is called Storygize. So this is what's called native content. So as August had alluded to, we've created 4 different articles focusing on, year-round activities, around the various seasons, the water-based activities, dark skies, and also putting together an article focused on like an itinerary. So if you're going to come and visit for say 3 days, what that itinerary and recommended itinerary would be. So really great educational awareness content that our audiences can consume to educate themselves on the opportunities to come to Moab during these specific time periods. And so that's what we're looking at right now. And again, the content that we'd be using is native articles. And so just as an aside for the native articles, just to bring some familiarity and some additional context to it, if you're visiting, a website, a news site, those types of sites, you might see some sponsored content there with a headline and an image that draws attention to you because it might be a specific type of content that you're interested in. That's what these native articles would be. They'd be served up to specific sites based on a traveler's interest. And so we're piquing their interest with great imagery, headlines that then they will click and then dive into further and go to your website where that content resides. And so that's what we're really working on doing right now. Again, focusing on these drive markets and convincing, locals in those markets to do those weekend getaways. Now, as August had alluded to, if we were to have some additional dollars right now, we're looking at that $100,000 budget. If we were to expand that budget, what we would do is, let's see here. I have a little problem with my slide. It looks like, there we go. You can see, can you see my screen okay? Let's just say it's an incremental 100. What's that?
The words are too small.
The words are small.
Are they? What are you seeing right now? Are you seeing just the flow chart?
Yeah. Yes.
I think you can explain it, Mark.
Okay, I apologize. We'll send this on and so overall, just explaining it here, what we would do if we were to say have an additional incremental spend of $100,000 as an example, we would expand the display campaign beyond, as well as the native campaign beyond the drive markets. Now we would go into our fly markets. So based on history and success in these markets with your campaigns, we'd look at Phoenix, Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Houston, Seattle, LA as an example. And so we would do both the drive markets, the fly markets, and increase the duration of the buy. So we've got a stronger buy all the way through August for both the display ad campaign as well as the native campaign. And the average booking window right now is 44 days. And so this would then support that 44-day booking window. So those are the recommendations for the summer campaign. I apologize, it's coming across on your screen so small.
It's all right, Mark. We'll follow up, and I think you can answer any questions you have there. I think it's also important to keep in mind that we do have educational messaging in market with regards to Arches Timed Entry that Love is running for us. So that's currently active. Oh, there you go. I'm skipping ahead. You can take over. Sorry, Mark.
No, I was going to say, so right now we've got the timed entry campaign currently going between our paid search, Google Ads. So people, searching will find us, and then also using TripAdvisor as well. We've been using paid social, and then also a KSL brand view, which is a native article on KSL as well. So as we look at some of the statistics here, the stats are strong. We're targeting audiences, and this is an important thing because the summer campaign is really educating or really drawing on that prospecting audience and getting them for this weekend, for the weekend travel. Pardon me, let me back up a little bit. The summer campaign is drawing attention to the opportunities at Moab and so forth. On this timed entry campaign, what we're doing is we're targeting audiences who are actually actively considering their trip to Utah or Southern Utah. So naturally, the main goal is awareness and education specific to the reservation requirements, but we're still tracking hotel bookings or revenue from this effort. So overall, it's a campaign of, if you're planning on coming, be aware of the reservation system requirements. And so it's more of that education awareness campaign. And so when we look at what we're doing right now, so far with the campaign, we've delivered almost 2.7 million impressions, and we have a post impression rate of 0.50. And the time entry post impression rate of last year was 0.37. So we've increased that. And what that post impression rate is basically we've served up ads, and our traveler may not have clicked on that ad right away, but they've come back on their own because of the memory and reminder of that ad. They've come back on their own to go to discover Moab and search for themselves. And so we like that, using that post impression rate, because it shows that they remembered the ad, they remembered the content, they've come back on their own time. And then we also have tracked 938 hotel bookings because of this as well. We also did the KSL brand view article where we delivered 6,000 page views with an average of 2 minutes and 25 minutes, two minutes and 25 seconds of engagement time. And then the native boost unit on TripAdvisor is driving 60% of the bookings, followed by our display messaging. And then our social engagement is well above our benchmark of 1% at 1.73%. And it's driven over 24,000 clicks to the reservation page. And really good positive sentiment in our comments. So if I keep going here, this is a page view distribution. So these are how the post impressions break down based on the page or website the audience goes to after seeing our display ads. So we've got 2,300 going to our homepage and all pages. The Arches pages specifically 346 and loading lodging options and so forth. So we track all these different components. When we talk about the hotel bookings of 938, this is our impact data. It's how we track these bookings. And so just the different data that we look at here, the average daily rate is $254. The average booking window, as I mentioned, is 44 days. The length of stay, the LOS there, that's 2.4 days, which is above the average of 1.9 days. And then the average booking window, as I've mentioned also is going back to that again, I'll just mention it here again, is the 44 days. So, and then as we go through here, just some screenshots of the creative. You'll see here on the left, the paid social. On the right is the KSL brand view ad or that native content. And then here are the display ads for our TripAdvisor campaign. So overall, the campaign's really tracking well. We continue to monitor and look at the data and adjust accordingly. So that's where we are on the timed entry campaign too. August, any questions there from you or the team?
I think, wanting to make sure that the priority is on today's discussion item with the campaign for approval, but obviously good context and would be willing to take, I don't have any questions on it, but if the commission has any questions on what's already in market. And then contextually, we already did a fly market campaign this spring for about $450,000.
Yeah. Any questions for Mark or August?
Maybe that needs to be the thing that they show to the public, showing here's the umbrella of the Red Cliff Foundation, and within it is music. This is the budget that.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. Oh, can you guys hear?
So I know we had a little disruption there. I don't know. Did anyone ask me any questions there? I'm sorry, I can't hear anybody.
Can you hear me, Mark?
Oh, I can hear you, Melissa.
Yeah, I cannot hear anybody from the.
There we go. Hey, Mark, we were just muted for a second. Kevin Walker, Commissioner Walker had a question.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, I don't know if it's to August or Mark or someone else. Anyway, we had some example, I think they were called display ads in the packet, pictures of an arch or a very nice sky, etc. Yep. And then people click on that, and then what happens? And I guess what I'm driving at, I think, and Chris maybe can give me exact language, but we have this policy that we want all our advertising to have a responsible recreation component. And these display ads just look like, come to Moab without anything additional. So I'm wondering, is that missing, or is it going to happen once you click on the ad? Or
no, it's a good question. What is the kind of like link pathway for the display?
Yeah, so I'll just mention a couple of things. Like on the native articles, all of the content, the end paragraph talks about the responsibility side of things. So we've made sure to include that. And also the click path, when somebody clicks on one of these ads, it'll go directly through the Discover Moab website. So they'll be able to consume that content and read about the responsible travel and so forth there as well. So that'll go directly from the viewer clicking and going then to the click path to your landing page for this campaign.
And the thinking there, Mark, my understanding is that for the like dark skies component, that'll click through to our dark skies like blog post. Is that right?
Yes.
And so that's where that responsible recreation content will be contained.
Yeah. So all that native content will live on your
On our
website.
site. Yeah.
Mary? Okay, so to summarize then, if we want to make sure that we've got a robust recreation component, we just have to make sure that this Discover Moab site and these various landing pages we're doing have that.
Yeah. So right this week, Mark has been working with Robert and Melissa on our staff to make sure that the actual articles and content are good, but they weren't ready for the packet. So we can be sure to circulate the language before they're published to address that concern.
Okay.
And we're just to add to that, we're just in the process right now of reviewing the content and approving the content. And once it's reviewed and approved, then all of that content with imagery and so forth is applied to your website. And then the links are provided, and we place pixels on your site so we can track user engagement to and from. So all of that's in works right now.
Yes, I'm working right now with Robert to finalize all the articles, and then maybe tomorrow, Mark, we're gonna send you all the proof.
Sounds great.
All right, thanks. Mary?
What, I mean, to me, it seems like with that we should have on those ads right somewhere, and it wouldn't have to, I think it could be done aesthetically, is to have recreate responsibly right on the first thing they see.
So do you have that page pulled up there?
Or at least the ones that we're seeing here, the ones that I have in my packet: masterpiece, wonder, wild wonders, nature's masterpiece.
So some of those you can see it has like the visit responsibly call to action.
Where?
Right, like the delicate art one, for example.
Okay, and then but the ones down below.
Yeah, so you could include something like that as a call to action. Obviously, there's only so much space. So when we're trying to highlight one of the potential focuses on like the dark skies component, encouraging if we want to make sure that tag, that call to action is there, we can make sure to do that.
Yeah. And I think that point's well taken, because that's always a major focus of ours as we develop the content. And these in particular, we want to have, the image drive the attention with that headline. And then hopefully that inspires them to click and come through to your website to consume more, where that recreate responsibly message is there as well. So they're going to get that eventually, if not up front.
I think it's really important on on anything where they're recreating, such as hiking or the river. It needs to be really up in front.
Sounds good. Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, and I'm against beating them up on the very first picture that they get out there. I think that some of the advertising that we're doing, even the ones out along the freeway, are to the point of chasing people away. They're not bringing them in here. I would rather see these without the recreation responsibly on them and let them find that later in the fine print, because we want to invite people here and then we want to educate them. I don't believe that we need to be playing the sheriff or the cop or the bad guy or whatever it is, because some of the ads that I've seen are just ridiculously over the top, with it to the point that they're threatening people if they come to Moab to recreate. And we've got to put a little different touch on that and spin on it from my perspective. And I know that's not a popular view here, but it needs to be said, and it needs to be out loud that there's other people with other views here, and we just have got to get away from beating people up that want to come visit here.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Chris had something to say.
Chris, sorry, I didn't. Yeah, go ahead.
So with regard to the policy, I just wanted to point out, communicating best practices for recreation is one option in the policy, but other options in the policy include just education. And so you know, I've always kind of considered that, for instance, if we did a dark skies ad or whatever, the click through could just be educating people on dark skies in Grant County. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I do think that, you know, there's certainly ways to engage in responsible recreation communication without coming off in a, you know, a way that's off-putting. And so I wouldn't just abandon the concept altogether by any means. But I do, you know, I always envision that with the policy that we have, that we, you know, get creative, both with regard to communicating best practices when people are here, and educating people about, you know, dark skies, paleontology, archaeology, all of the array of things that we have here that are really assets to tourism.
Yeah. Thanks.
If I,
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Mark, can you show the dark sky link,
yeah,
please?
let me just pull that up really quick, if I may. So for example, hopefully everyone can see my screen okay here. So here's, does the dark skies show up here?
It shows up well, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so here we've got, here's the latest content for dark skies. So we've got beautiful imagery here. And so let's imagine sort of the travelers engagement process where we serve up a display ad. They see that beautiful image and the fun headline, they click, they come here. And so they see summer stargazing in Moab's dark sky parks. They've got a video they can click on, but they start reviewing all this information here, talking about where to view. There's the Arches National Park, Canyonlands, Dead Horse. So we've got some really good educational components and inspiring information here, what to look for, the Milky Way, the Summer Triangle, and so forth. And so as we go through these stargazing tips and so forth, we always end with this message of view responsibly. So we adapt that responsibility and that responsible message to the individual things, whether it's dark skies, whether it's the river rafting and so forth. And here in particular, we've got this view responsibly. Please note that using artificial light sources to light up landscapes, rock formations, or other park features for photos or other purposes is prohibited. And so those are the types of things we've got here to include. So then, of course, we anticipate them and hope that they continue to go through the website and learn the different attractions and all the other components within the site that talk about responsible travel.
Great, thank you. Kevin?
Mary had her hand up.
I was just gonna say, I know like there's a lot of recreation towns and places that are really proactively having people sign pledges. That's what happens when you go to Bend, Oregon. I mean, you know, I don't feel we're hitting them over the head. I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I guess my comment is similar in spirit to Mary's. I guess I agree with Bill that I disagree. And he said I would disagree, and you were exactly right, Bill. Like to agree with him. I think we need to do much more, and I think it needs to also be, you know, in some cases in the first impression, not, you know, at the end of the article that if you click. You know, our visitation levels remain very high. I'm looking at Highway 191 traffic data right now, and it's the last weekend. If you exclude Memorial Day and exclude 2021, it's an all-time record for Moab. You know, so we're not driving visitors away with what we've done so far. But I think, you know, we do have lots of issues, both livability issues in town and damage in the backcountry. And I don't think we're fulfilling our full potential of using our advertising to help people know that they should stay on the trail, et cetera. And I think we're doing a lot better than we were last year. Each year, I think we get better at that. But I just want to make sure we're still moving in that direction and thinking. I think that should be a very high priority in the ads. So,
Bill had his hand raised.
I'm fine with the educational message, just not the brutal educational one. And that's what's been up on some of the billboards and also in some of the examples that we've seen. They didn't end up coming out. I just think it needs to be a subtle thing, and it needs to be something that doesn't turn people off.
I appreciate Chris's point about taking a bit of a middle road with education and messaging. And I also want to open the discussion up a little bit about August mentioned an increased ad spend for this summer. I am very familiar with my business on Main Street. I know March was a very rough month, and summer. I think summer's a good opportunity to increase visitation a little bit and do it in a way that that town can handle. And I've heard that from a lot of folks. I'll also go out on a limb and say that I like what I see from Love in this campaign too. I don't find anything too crazy here, but yeah, as far as in the packet, it looked like August, the EDAB discussed another $100,000 towards this. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. The Travel Council Board.
Yeah, Travel Council Board recommended. We basically took a look at in our March meeting, anticipating the passage of HB 416.
Yeah.
Starting to sketch out what would the additional, basically the shift over of the remaining balance of revenues for this year that would not be able to be allocated towards economic diversification dollars, estimated somewhere around $500,000. So as a part of a potential kind of budget recommendation from that board, one thing they recommended was increasing the total budget for this campaign by at least $100,000. In subsequent conversations with Chris, it seems like potentially more than that could also be recommended and sufficient given kind of what we're seeing in the TRT numbers coming in the beginning of the year, given that we've had a really strong winter and kind of a slower start to our season, as the season in the ski resorts has been wonderful.
Yeah.
And so wanting to make sure that we have a strong position for the rest of the year from a TRT revenue standpoint, and also addressing kind of the last 2 years slowness in the summer. This is, I think, probably the best position within our kind of fully staffed capacity part of our year, March through November-ish.
Yeah.
We already have full staff over the summer, and we're seeing kind of under capacity. It's, I think, the best place kind of to use a scalpel to kind of address those visitation trends. And so I think increasing budget to this and or complementing that, with targeting some of the co-op monies that are available over the summer, although that's not going to get until August. So it's a longer term project. I know that got brought up earlier. And I think to Kevin's point, it's hard when we're looking at each of these campaigns in an isolated fashion, rather than here's the entire suite of the strategy and how we're tying education to the kind of visitation oriented campaigns. And research shows from what Love has done on the state that you're using inspirational content with educational content, showing it to the same people within the same campaign. Both components have better metrics, higher engagement, higher statistics. People like when the place that they're visiting is taking care of itself.
Yeah.
And so to speak to longer term goals, there's a lot of conversations around how we build kind of a more intentional top to bottom visitor education program and put paid media behind that. That's kind of in development with the Trails Department and Recreation Committee and whatnot. But for now, looking at our needs for the summer and this marketing campaign kind of is priority number one as we continue to develop the educational components of the communication strategy.
Yeah. Mary?
My only concern with that information being on the bottom.
Yeah.
Is statistically, people read the first 2 paragraphs of almost every article. I mean, it's just very few people that read a newspaper article or you open up are going to get to the bottom. They're going to read the first or second, maybe the third, maybe the headlines underneath the photos they're going to read. But statistically, they don't go to the bottom.
Yeah, so one thing we'll have is total page time. We can't know exactly what they read, but we'll see at the end of this how much time was spent on a given page, which is an indication of engagement. Can't say that they got to line 132 or whatever, but so we'll have some indication of engagement there, but also, as I said before, I think that the commission will have an opportunity to see all the finalized copy before it's paid media is put behind it. So there'll be an opportunity
and Love is feedback on. And Love has been very receptive to our concerns.
Yeah, Love is great.
And and increase in damage in backcountry we hear about every time I go to a meeting with land agencies, all of them, BOM, Forest Service, parks. It's increasing tremendously, partly because the amount of people there are increasing.
So I think our goal is very much a twin mission of ensuring that we have high quality places that people like to visit in perpetuity and that they're still coming there.
Yeah. And the travel council's recommendation of increasing, would that just be beefing up these existing campaigns, or would it be a new?
It looked like from Mark's presentation, he was talking about moving into some different markets as well and going beyond the drive-in to some fly-in, et cetera.
That's exactly right. So we would beef up the display ads and the native campaign and have a greater duration there. But we would move from not only doing the drive markets, we would layer on the fly markets as well.
With our airport woes, would be it might be prudent to look at markets that connect through Phoenix.
Yeah.
Alaska.
We've been understood. Yeah.
Actually, does August, do you know, I mean, if for people who visit Moab and didn't drive here, so they flew, I'm assuming a lot of them fly to Grand Junction or fly to Salt Lake, or maybe they flew to Las Vegas and they're doing a big tour. So I've always understood the fly market to be the large majority of fly market doesn't use the Moab airport. Is that right?
Yeah, fly market doesn't necessarily indicate that they're literally flying to Canyonlands. It's more, if you're in Chicago, you're probably not driving here. If you're in Seattle, you're probably not driving here. So it's more of it, my understanding, it's the delineation is more that of travel time, ease of travel.
Okay.
And, if we're targeting LA, for the most part, you're probably gonna fly here. Obviously, there's a big summer road trip kind of culture in America. And so some of that fly market advertising is going to be resulting in someone driving here. But the correlation between longer distance and higher spend than a destination is clear across markets. So the farther you come, or the longer you stay, the spend typically, which is why that international visitor is so crucial, and we don't have that right now.
And that's why we adapted that for a fly campaign in the fall, because with the winter travel and the different flight schedules as well coming through Moab. So we look at that and are mindful of that.
Yeah, I think to Jacques' point, we've talked before about the fly traveler, not being the typical campers that we get from drive markets. They tend to stay in hotels more, rent bikes, hire outfitters, hang out by the pool, go to restaurants, and do some of the more front country cultural sort of evening stuff. And so I could see why the advisory board would be supportive of that. And I think that a lot of times the drive market is some of that more impactful thing. And it's understanding why there's not as much popularity in July and August to come to Moab and camp out. It makes for challenging conditions.
Well, I think that's part of the education of saying, Moab is not just sunshine, blue skies, orange rocks. It is the night skies. It is the water. It is these other ways that you can come and visit our area, even if it's like 105 during the day. It means that we have a wonderful evening. I mean, the free concert series on Fridays is like one of the nicest things that we have around it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I've seen my summer business go down the last few years. I think the lack of international visitors has been huge on businesses, definitely. And I don't see that getting better right now with the Euros pretty much in the dumps. And
the international forecasts show the market recovering around 2026.
Wow, that's a long way out. So I personally would be very supportive of increasing the spend here and looking at some prudent fly in campaign especially for summer. I've always said, I personally love summer here. I like the heat, but there is a lot to do in the summer. The water's great. It's going to be a big water year. And when there's people come to town, they do other things. Like they will go out, take a bike tour that starts at like 6:30 in the morning on some of those days. And I think it would be good all around for some of the businesses that started on the wrong foot due to weather this year. It would be nice to see some increase in
Well, and if we could segment towards heat resilient individuals, that's well, just the world, I don't know.
I'm with Jacques. I think July here is great. I encourage all my friends to visit then, you know.
So we'll put that on the next ad campaign.
There you go.
Be resilient. This is your place.
I guess I think the right kind of ads and ad campaigns that have a heavy educational and responsible recreation component, and then I would feel good about spending more money. But I guess I would like to, you know, if in some future meeting we're going to allocate more funds, I guess I'd like to also have in place, like, you know, a kind of overall strategy for how that's happening. I mean, maybe you already have it, but I just don't feel like it's been presented here.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And you're, you know, the point about, you know, we're advertising lots of different things and you should consider it in its entirety. That's the point well taken. But I just want to know that we're doing everything we can do to educate visitors, you know, and I think that helps everybody, including the visitors in the long run. So.
You know, and one thought, just off the cuff here. So August, nothing we've chatted about or anything like that, but we could, I mean, we're looking at, you know, because the poignant messages of, you know, dark skies or the water, the seasonal activities, we want people to be drawn in by those. And then of course, getting the education on the site when they come, but maybe there's a blend of messaging. Let's just say, maybe we blend in those specific recreate responsibly with the dark skies, for example. Let's say for every 4 ads that are served up, 3 are the dark skies and one's recreate responsibly. So we've got sort of that blend of ongoing education. So again, more of a strategic discussion, but something to throw out there just off the cuff, if I may.
And that's a level of granularity we can deliver.
Yeah.
Through Sojourn.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, even in the ones that are presented here tonight, you know, just like the click through button, one of them says book your trip, another one says visit responsibly. And I think that like just that little visit responsibly as you click through is starting to kind of get those juices flowing more than just like, here's the booking. And I think before we had a tagline like preserve and protect or something.
So that's actually there. If you look at the logo, it says Moab.
Under the Moab, okay.
Right on the right.
Yeah.
Lower right corner.
It's a pretty small font, but that's there.
Yeah, but I guess I also want to follow up on what I think Mark just said, which is we don't have to fit every possible message into the same article or the same display ad. We can just have a mix, and you know, some proportion of them will be come to Moab, and the others will be just lead with, you know, stay on the trail very responsibly. And I think that might be a better approach than trying to make these display ads really crowded. And
it's hard to make everything.
Yeah.
I think that's really good feedback that they can.
Yeah, and we can test that, you know, with those messages, we always test and look at which ads are drawing best. And we can, you know, A/B test these and see what our audiences are doing with the content. But certainly some strategic moves that we can make with those calls to action.
Awesome. And I think regardless of what decision is made today for this particular campaign, I think next week at the Travel Council Board meeting, we'll take a look at kind of that budget changing for the future and looking and bringing back to the next meeting the next commission meeting, on the 16th. Potentially various levels of increasing this campaign alongside with maybe to address Kevin's concern, like longer term content and strategy with regards to how we're tying the promotional with the educational.
Right. Yeah. And I just want to bring the conversation back around because we've been on it for 45 minutes, but we're basically like a two-part thing here. The first is just approving the $100,000 ad spend for this campaign that's presented. And the second one is discussing future ad spend that we can't vote on today, but are we in agreement that we'd like to see that come back and awesome. Okay, great.
I'll sign on.
Okay. Thank you, August.
Ready to make a motion?
If you'd like to make a motion, Bill.
Sure, I move to approve the 2023 summer marketing campaign.
Thanks.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion on the table by Commissioner Winfield and a second by Commissioner Walker. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And we pass that unanimously. All right, Mark, thank you very much.
Appreciate you all. Take care. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, August. All right. We're up to agenda item number 2, and I would like to turn this over to Kevin to run for a sec because I have got to run for a sec.
Okay. So, Chris, take it away.
Well done, Kevin.
I can do that.
All right, so I've been working with Moab Valley Fire Protection District for several months now, helping them with some potential annexation plans. And it's gotten to the point now where I really want to get some of the decision makers in on the process so that we don't run the risk of coming up with something that y'all don't want to approve. And so I think I kind of spelled out a lot of the details in the agenda summary. There's quite a lot to do. Some of it's a little technical and it's going to be fairly involved, but we're hoping to get it done by the end of the year. And the point of getting it done by the end of the year is that the tax commission requests that annexations be done by the end of the year if you want to begin to collect property tax of the newly annexed regions. So that's kind of the deadline. We budgeted $25,000 to provide Moab Valley Fire for some consultants and attorneys, which they've hired and we've been working with. And so I think we're moving along fairly well that way. Is there anything you want to say, Shay, about this or? No, great. Yeah. So I mean, I said Shay's here. I figured I would bring him up, but yeah, just looking to get 3 commissioners appointed to a committee, and then we'll work to get everything finalized. The annexations won't be something probably that the commission will process. However, there's several agreements that we're going to need to hammer out. Moab Valley Fire is requesting a 3-year transition plan with some increased contributions through that 3 years to help them, take over what's essentially fire protection for the whole county, except for Castle Valley, who also wants to do a small annexation of Castleton. So we'll probably help them as well. So just looking for some commissioners to join this committee and help us out.
So if I understand, so the rough outlines of what's being proposed is both the Castle Valley and the Moab Valley fire districts will expand so that the whole county is covered in one or the other fire district. And the hope is in the long term, then, those taxing entities can cover expenses, but during the transition, there's a discussion of having the county kick in some extras that cover everything.
Yeah, so, our taxing district is countywide. And so part of the rationale for annexation is that these taxing Castle Valley Fire, Moab Valley Fire, both taxing entities, fire protection districts, and they can tax for maintenance and operation. So for instance, we could compare that with Thompson Springs Fire Special Services District. Special service districts can't levy a property tax for maintenance and operations. And so there's a problem, with regard to using a special service district for these kinds of things. They have the capacity to levy a property tax if it's voter approved for capital infrastructure, and that's it. So, but we really need a revenue stream for countywide fire protection. And right now, everybody that's living outside of these fire protection districts is basically getting fire protection for free. And it's essentially being subsidized by the folks that are in the fire protection district. And so we're just looking to kind of square things up across the whole county, make sure that we've got fire protection coverage everywhere in the whole county, get it all formalized. We've been running off of informal agreements forever to make sure that we have full coverage across the whole county. But we're getting to the point where informal agreements, are getting they're making me nervous, as we get more and more busy. And I think that having a formalized agreement you know, is gonna be the best thing, and to have the professionals, the people who know how to do fire protection, you know, in charge of the show is the best bet.
You want the gavel back, Sean?
What's that? Oh, yeah. Right, Bill, go ahead.
Considering there's three of them, I'd like to put my name in for one of those three, but I can see the value in what we're trying to do here for sure to take on the entire county. We've got a staff over there that go above and beyond and take on the entire county already, because none of them are willing to sit back and wait in an emergency. They still service that area. So to help them in that transition financially, and then to set them up to where they can succeed makes a lot of sense in my mind. So.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
I ask a dumb question, as I always do?
I'm sure.
Can you guys tell me a little bit about with San Juan County and the development that they're proposing in the south end of our valley, what is their, obligation to begin to provide emergency services to that part of the valley? I assume we're providing those emergency services. Can you speak to that? I know that doesn't really have much to do with, I'm just interested.
So right now, we have the same MOU type thing that with San Juan County as we do with the current Grant County that is not in our protection district.
Right, okay.
So it's just that they just pay us a certain amount of money to cover it.
Is there anything in their works, for them to put something in place?
There's a lot that's been talked about, and I'm not sure when or
Right, okay.
It's been a pretty controversial topic down there. I think various ideas have been floated and not all the there's a diversity of opinion about what they ought to be doing.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Yeah, Mary?
Has there been discussion of annexing that part of the county into this huge district, since you're already serving it?
annexing that part of San Juan County.
It'd be a lot of tax.
Yeah, there's an option for it. Unfortunately, we don't have.
You don't have a
state, but San Juan County does.
So are you
we
working?
offered it, and it's-
So you're talking to Mac and.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, I think, for example, what we're talking about right now, like, as we speak, we have a fire engine at mile marker 193 on I-70 for a vehicle that's on fire. Who's paying for that? Right. And because it's us, right? It's the people inside the district that are paying for that to go out there, which means that's a fire engine away from here and that's staff away from here. But if there was something that happened here, it's short. So we need to make sure that we're covered, and that's our concern.
Yeah, Bill.
I can update a little bit on the San Juan County end as well, because I've had discussions with both Mac and Bruce Adams down there, and they're definitely trying to work with keeping Moab Fire, taking care of that at the current time, because it would be a huge expense for them up front to provide that when there's just not the level of people living out there to pay for it right now. So it's still somewhat back and forth in talks, and I've discussed it a little bit with both of these, TJ and Shay, and but I've also discussed it with Mac and Bruce Adams. They both approached me at different times. One at the last UEC and one at the previous one as well.
Right. Yeah, Kevin.
I was just going to say, I'd also be happy to be on this committee that we're going to.
And I would also.
Okay, Mike.
I'm gonna ask, because I don't know, why are we not going all the way and trying to annex Castle Valley?
Because they have a fire district.
I know that.
So we did discuss the possibility briefly of Moab Valley Fire taking over out there, and they declined.
Okay. Thanks. That was my
People's
question and
Republic
answer.
of Castle
Thanks.
Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary.
I'll make a motion to move. I move to appoint Commissioner Kevin Walker, Commissioner Bill Winfried, and Commissioner Tricia Dean to the Strategic Development Director, Chris Baird, to a county fire protection committee.
Thank you, Mary.
I'll second.
All right, motion on the table by Commissioner McGann and a second by Commissioner McCurdy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. TJ raised his hand back there just for good measure. Thanks.
Passed by 8, huh?
All right. Thanks, guys. We will move on to agenda item number 3, ordinance approving a request to rezone parcel number 02-0017-0070. And that is at 1574 Murphy Lane, Moab, Utah, to designate the alternative dwelling overlay district. And Elisa's not here, so Jenna will present.
Yes, I'm going to see you all pretty regularly. I'm probably going to be presenting land development applications moving forward.
Okay.
And Elisa will continue with more range planning and ordinances and exchanges. So
great.
Before we get into the actual first application, just for anyone listening in, just a bit of a light background for the ADO ordinance. And to be clear for you, Mallory, yes, May 16th, you guys would see the next package of ITAs.
Okay.
So that would probably be workshop. The passing of the November 2022 ADO ordinance permitted the development of 150 alternative dwelling units within the pilot program, or the program would expire after 1 year, whichever of those items came first. The ADO ordinance was approved with the goal of providing local workforce housing by allowing different types of non-traditional housings on a single lot. During the first intent to apply round, each of the 4 next applications were given positive support by the commission to move forward with a full rezone application. Each of these applicants did submit those applications, and at your last meeting on April 18th, you had a public hearing. This group of rezone applications consists of 105 of the 150 units permitted per the pilot program. If all of the units were approved this evening, an additional 45 units could be considered during the second ITA submission period in May, and also the 3rd round in September. Just as a heads up for you, we do have already 6 ITA applications for the next round and 75 units included with that. The evaluation for criteria for approving or denying ADOs is described in Land Use Code section 4.9.2 and include the items of preferred zoning districts of MFR, small lot residential, large lot residential, highway commercial, general business, and neighborhood commercial. Also compatibility with the existing neighborhood, historic use of the property, traffic impacts, commute time, relative impacts on water resources, and overall design of the proposed development. If approved, an applicant would record along with the rezone approval, the approved master plan, as well as the development agreement, which would define the number of units that could be developed, and also includes a required deed restriction. That deed restriction includes that overnight accommodations is strictly prohibited, and those alternative dwelling units should be occupied for at least 6 consecutive days, either by the tenant or by their employer. It shall be rented by one of those for 60 consecutive days. Okay. So, for a brief of the first application, this is for 1574 Murphy Lane for Marine King. The parcel is 02-0017-0070, and the application proposes 32. Actually, let me share my screen for you so you can be looking at the master plan. 32 full hookup RV dwelling sites situated around a U-shaped driveway, meeting the required setbacks for the district of 10 feet on both the side and the rear property lines. The currently vacant portion of the property proposed for development is within the preferred SLR zoning district and is located behind the existing Pat Creek Trailer Park, which contains about 30 dwelling sites, and also behind the 49 site campground. If this portion of property were to be developed per the underlying zoning district, 20 units at 5 units per acre would be permitted to be developed. The property is mainly bound by RR zoned properties and is located along a major collector road per the UTMP, and access to this proposed development would be on Murphy Lane at either of the 2 access roads. Existing vegetation on the property would remain, and additional shrubbery and planting would be provided to each site to enhance the landscaping. During the public hearing for this application, various concerns and public comments were submitted that included questions related to property maintenance and drainage, campfires and generators, traffic impact on existing roadways, especially Murphy Murphy Road, and verification by a third party to ensure that the units were utilized for workforce housing. At your last public hearing, the planning director did speak to each of those concerns, but of course I can also speak to any of those as well. Take any questions about details.
Can you just reiterate what their zoning would currently allow? One more time, you said it just a second ago. if you
Smaller
don't mind.
residential, and at 4 acres, it is 5 units per acre, so 20 units there.
Okay, thank you.
And this is providing how many again?
32.
2.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna make a motion,
Go ahead, Trish.
if you guys are okay with that.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna make a motion to deny the alternative dwelling overlay for parcel number 02-0017-0070, 1574 Murphy Lane.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion on the table to deny by Commissioner Hedin and a second by Commissioner Winfield. Discussion.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna write down a few things that really stuck out to me. I really appreciate the individuals that have taken the time to write in, to come and sit through. I don't even know how long that meeting was last time. Hours and hours and hours. In order to voice their concerns. To me, I went and visited that area on Sunday morning, very early, and sat there, and you know, it's a beautiful little spot, and was pretty taken aback by the existing campground in the sense that everybody was hauling up and moving out first thing in the morning, and it's pretty disturbing. Like, the reality is there is Pat Creek mobile home park, there's campground in the back, but everything surrounding it is residential. And so those individuals are, you know, they're living with that. And to add to that, I think it's a lot. And to be honest, when the ITAs were out, I hadn't taken the time to go to the site and really observe it. And I want to apologize for not taking the time to do my homework on that. My other concern is the lack of oversight of that facility. You know, when I think about something like Contractors Roost, Dan is there and he's on site and he's managing it, and he's managing it very well. And that is not what's going on here. We have a manager on site that is fairly unresponsive to neighbors' concerns. And then we have an owner that lives in, I think it's Connecticut. So that's a great concern to me. I think there's been issues with compliance in the past, and I don't really see that. I think that's just going to escalate. I am concerned about traffic on Murphy Lane. And so it's a very small road that does already, you know, carry a large amount of traffic. So I'm concerned about that. And then lastly, I do think we have a bunch in the works, ITAs coming up that I think would be, you know, they're on 191. And I think they're just going to fill these shoes a little better than disturbing a rural residential area or a residential area even more. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. I'd like to bring up, I'd just like to ask if this were to get denied, would the owner be able to bring this back up again if she addressed some of the concerns?
I would think so. Of course, she
Right.
would submit it with a new ITA package. Once you got to the rezone, it would be another application.
Okay, gotcha. Right. Thank you.
I mean, I would love, the reason I asked about the underlying zoning is that I would love to see that, you know, I think that area has capacity to be developed to full-time residences that would, you know, provide workforce housing. And I think it'd be a great little spot for that.
Kevin?
But the catch to that is that if it's developed under existing zoning, there's no strings attached. So it could be 20 second homes potentially. And so I mean, that's the big advantage of these programs, is we require to be workforce housing. So I think that's a pretty significant difference. I don't know if there's other things that would prevent it from being develop this SLR at the maximum density. But
Yeah, as, again, I want to state that there's been issues with them conforming to or doing illegal activities in the past. And so I'm a little concerned that they would adhere to, you know, what we're asking for as far as compliance to workforce. So just my opinion.
Yeah, Bill.
I can't speak to any illegal activities. I don't know about any of that, but I have been involved with the property on the north side of the Cam Park ever since the creation of that little subdivision that Hasu did there. And I helped on at least 3 of those 4 houses as a volunteer in there. And the problems go all the way back to that time clearly. And I just think if we're gonna upzone somebody and there's problems in the neighborhood that have been going on for a very long time, I have a hard time supporting that. I think that that, as you said, to bring it back after some of these problems have been mitigated wouldn't make a lot of sense, because we need to be being good neighbors when we're increasing 32 spots. Do we want to guess that maybe there's 1 or 2 vehicles, sometimes 2 vehicles for every spot? They park one and they drive the other. It's an awful lot of traffic and impact on the neighborhood. And I struggle with it.
Yeah, I'm kind of a similar mind. When you look at the numbers, this is 32 is 20% of the total allocated spots. And if there's some good options coming up, this is a pilot program. We're not sure if it's going to come back. I've thought about potentially approving less than the 32, but I agree that with Bill and Trish that this may not be the ideal spot for this type of zoning. Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, I also have some concerns, and I don't necessarily disagree with what Trish and Bill said, but you know, we have more choices than just approving as presented versus denying altogether. And in fact, in the packet, you know, we could add a condition that, you know, no generators and campfires are allowed, and we could also reduce the numbers from 32 to, you know, whatever we think is appropriate, maybe 16 or something. That's an option as well.
Right.
But I definitely, I do think it's a significant amount of traffic on Murphy Lane. I think when this ITA got the go ahead, we didn't know how many other applications we were going to have. And now we do have a better idea. You know, we know there are other more appropriate spots. So to me, at minimum, that's an argument for reducing the number of spots. I'm not sure what I think about, you know, taking it all the way, you know, just denying it altogether, especially considering what the zoning is. So the underlying zoning. So yeah.
I'm kind of in a similar boat. I think that the concerns around fires and generators are real. I also think that improvements around drainage would need to happen in order for them to come into a compliance and get any kind of building approved. It also seems like a large number to me for where that is. I have been out. I have a friend that lives adjacent to this as well. And so it's hard for me though to say that we want these and then say, well, it's going to drastically change the area where it is, because I think wherever these occur, the nature of it is that it is going to change the character. And so at some point we do have to kind of decide, is it acceptable for a trade-off? And we don't have a blank slate of like a land map where we can say this property is going to be this and this property is going to be that, because people are already living places, people are already in existence. So I am hesitant to approve it as is, but I'm also hesitant to just outright deny it when we're have the opportunity to make a small dent in this crisis that we're facing.
Yeah, Mary.
Just a clarification. You said there's how many more coming up?
About 75 units proposed for the second round within 6 applications.
Would that hit our?
It would-
Go over.
It would go over this.
Oh,
The
okay,
total
so
amount
that-
proposed
so
for
it's-
today was
it's not-
105.
It's not like,
So
we're
I
going
think,
to not be able
Well,
to.
and those are just proposed. We haven't seen.
We
them
haven't
yet.
looked
We're not-
at 'em.
We're not sure what.
yeah, I think if we were to deny this one outright, as the motion on the floor does, and then approve all 75 of those, which we haven't seen yet, that would put us up around 145, mid 140s, I think.
Sounds right, yeah. Actually, a
what-
little bit, it would actually, yeah, that's right.
It's a hard one because we're in a crisis and you want it, but there's.
Yeah.
Real concerns
There
that need to be addressed and.
Mike?
I'm gonna follow right with what Barry said. We're in a housing crisis. We need houses. And the neighborhood's gonna be affected. It is already affected. And I'm having a hard time approving this as is. In the fact that the good neighbors are not being followed right now. Or as I see it, not being followed right now. So it's on both ways. It's hard to say no to housing, but there's steps that could already have been taken that would say yes in my mind.
I'll call for a vote.
I guess I'm going to say just a little bit more. So. Sorry, look, I guess I'm not sure. I'm kind of on the fence about this, but I think two things that Bill and Trish said, I think were important and kind of convincing. One is that just, for these things to work, and it involves, the management of the place, enforcing the rules. Yeah. And I haven't personally done a thorough review of the past, but, based on things we've heard preliminarily, it seems like they don't have a stellar record doing that. I think one might want to know, hear both sides of the story before concluding that, but, tentatively, that's what you're saying. And the other one, which I think is very, very important, is, yes, housing is important, and yes, we should approve a bunch of these, but I think the system that we've used recently with both HDHO and with this is we decide how many we're going to do, and then we look for, what are the least impactful places, what are the best ways to site them. And it's hard to know whether something's the best place to cite it until you see what the competition is. And so one thing that's changed between when this first came before us and right now is that we know there's enough interest that, we're probably, even if we were to deny this, I think we're going to hit 150. And so I think probably the strongest argument you guys have made is that the other places are better than this for citing them. So
Just to maybe add one more comment to that. Of course, in addition to this next round of ITs, there is still another round of ITs.
Two more, correct?
Yeah,
I
one in
believe,
May
yeah.
and then also September.
Yeah. And so, and again, this owner could potentially change what's on the table and make good with some of the owner,
Concerns.
Yeah, exactly. Address a lot of the concerns and bring this back in a different form or even the same form. Steve?
I just want to be very clear. We've kind of said that they've done illegal things and that there have been bad neighbors. Apart from the public comments, do we have any ordinance violations or anything like that in the packet that this individual entity has done? Because I want to just make that very clear if we're coming out and saying they're breaking the law, they're violating ordinances, and there's nothing in the packet. I just want to be clear on that.
yeah, I don't have that evidence, and I was trying to be cautious about saying that. I do think that on this exact part 4 acres we're talking about now, there used to be some overnight rentals that were not, and I think that was actually living it for a while. So maybe that's what people are referring to when they talk about.
I just want to be as clean as we can because.
Thanks. Thanks, Steve.
If you would like me to answer to that specifically, there are no current code violation elements in with their code compliance officer, and we have received no comments on that property.
For
Current ones. No current.
Okay.
Current complaints not related to this application.
All right, I'll call for a vote on the motion to deny. The motion was put forward by Commissioner Hedin and seconded by Commissioner Winfield. All those in the favor of the motion, raise your hand. All opposed. And abstaining? Okay, the motion passes to my count, 5 votes to 1 with one abstain. In opposition was Commissioner Clapper and abstaining was Commissioner Walker. Thank you. All right, we will move on to agenda item 4, ordinance to approve a request to rezone parcel number 02-0020-0020 at 2850 South Highway 191, Moab, Utah, to designate the alternative dwelling overlay district. And back to Jenna.
Not quite zoomed in on my screen. This application is for 2850 Highway 191 for Tyson Carroll on property 02-0020-0020. This application proposes 36 full hookup RV dwelling sites, averaging 1,000 square feet plus the required parking space for each site. The sites are situated around a wide one-way U-shaped driveway, providing access via Highway 191, which of course would have to be approved and evaluated by UDOT for highway occupancy permit. The subject parcel is 2.40 acres and located within the preferred zoning district of highway commercial and is currently vacant. The property is bound on the south by Nations Towing, the Oars facility to the north, and residential use to the west and the rear. Screening requirements would be met along that rear property line abutting that protected RR zoning district. And pocket plantings would be added during the site plan review that would include drought-resistant native plants and shrubbery. As designed, the development envelope adheres to the required HC highway commercial setbacks. Drainage on the property would be designed to include a detention pond at the northeast corner of the property in order to manage the stormwater, which originates off-site and follows an existing 25-foot storm pipe and open drainage channel on that north property line. Any drainage needs would be assessed and evaluated and approved by the county engineer during that site plan approval process. Located along a principal arterial per the UTMP, this development provides quick access to the city center via a 5-minute driveway on 191. And that kind of briefs the application for you. Can I answer any details?
Anyone have a question for Jenna? I had a chance to go out and look at this as well, and it seems like it's pretty well situated for something of this nature.
Yeah,
Yes,
I was going to make a similar comment. I think it's got, commercial neighbors on two sides, highway on the one side. It does have residential property on one side, but they're separated by the power line, so the actual residences are quite far.
It is quite far. Yeah, I thought so as well.
So I think this would be one of the least impactful places to put something. Trish,
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the alternative dwelling overlay ADO for Grand County parcel number 02-0020-0020 and associated master plan and development agreement with the following conditions. 1, development is limited to 36 ADO sites as it designated on the approved master plan dated 2/15/2023, and 2, the owner shall record the development agreement in the real property records of Grand County simultaneously with the approved ordinance and prior to application for further site plan construction or development approvals.
Thanks, Trish.
Second.
All right, I have a motion on the table by Commissioner Hedin and a second by Commissioner McGann. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And this one passes unanimously. On to agenda item number 5, ordinance to approve a request to rezone parcel number. Thanks. Actually, I will, Stephen just reminded me that I did not call for public comment at 6 o'clock. And I will do that now. Was there anyone in the chambers who would like to come forward and make a comment? Is there anybody on Zoom who has logged in and would like to say something? Okay, got that done. Thanks, Stephen, for reminding me. I should have picked that up. And
Jacques, before this might be a question for Stephen before we go into the next one. The sample motions had this long list of findings, and it wasn't actually a list of findings. It was a list of finding topics, just quoted from the ordinance. But I do think we're supposed to make findings on these things if we approve them. So we didn't have to do that the first time because we were denying. It means, do we do that and do we do it as part of the motion or do we just kind of? I know I asked a similar question a couple of weeks ago, but I don't think anyone's going to challenge this one, but I just want to make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's.
I mean, if there's consistency among the group about particular findings, then you could do it within the motion. That would be cleanest.
Do you think we should take the time to
Probably,
revise?
I mean, you guys can, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but in the future for good record keeping, it's good to have the full scope of it within.
Okay, thanks, Stu. All right, on to agenda item number 5, ordinance to approve and request to rezone parcel number 03-0002-0087 at West 400 North. 10, actually, the address is 1089 North 400 West. So that's a bit of a typo in the on the agenda to designate the alternative dwelling overlay district. Back to Jenna.
Yeah. As you stated, the application is for parcel number 03-0002-0087. It's for Brian Martinez. This ADO application proposes 28 600 square foot dwelling sites located also on a circular interior driveway. The 3-acre subject parcel is located within the rural residential zoning district that since 2007 has historically been utilized for employee housing for the NAVTAC employees. The property is bound on the north and the east by Moab City property operating as the sewer treatment plants. It's found on the south and the west by Grand County property, also zoned rural residential and operated by the Nature Conservancy. While not located on an arterial or collector road as preferred, the development provides easy access to the city center via 400 North. Screening and landscaping requirements are likely already met with the existing vegetation, but confirmation would be provided during site plan application, as those properties to the west and the south are zoned RR and are a protected zone district, and that screening would be required. The proposal also includes barbecue, pergola, and thickly vegetated site conditions, which will provide personal privacy for many of the sites. Because the development offers sites that can accommodate a variety of dwelling types, including tents, tiny homes, dwelling vehicles, and RVs, the proposal includes a community kitchen and a bathhouse and the development of which would include coordination and approval with the health department and Bill Hulse, the FEMA floodplain administrator. And then, of course, any of those site plan approvals would also happen during site plan application.
So I mean, I understand they're coordinating with Bill and Orion. So these are just, but are they hauling water there? Are they going to have?
No, it will be located. Well, you would have to confirm that you have a potable water source within at least 200 feet of all the dwelling sites, and then also within the community facility building, bathhouse, they would likely have it in there. So of course, design of those items would be confirmed during the site plan,
Yeah.
that part
Yeah.
of it.
So I should. Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
we
fine.
spoke in detail about all this.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Jenna? And this one is actually, I live on 400 North. So this is at the end of my street, and I frequently get down there. And I've definitely noticed the camping down there. There's been a few people since maybe 2007. I moved there in 2009, but it's really increased in the last couple of years. And I don't necessarily feel like it's increased traffic too much on 400 North. And it's an interesting area, and it's different from some of the other spots, but I think if it's pulled off as intended and as it looks, I think it would be a pretty decent way for NAVTAC to employ their folks in the season. Bill?
Yeah, you say two sides have future potential of residential on two sides of the property. Is that
I think it's zoned rural residential, but one of the zoning is the Nature Conservancy. It's the wetlands there. And then what was the other one that was zoned rural?
It's the two owners are Grand County and it's the Nature Conservancy, and the other is one battery is the city of Moab as the sewer treatment plant.
The sewer treatment plant is right there on there.
So no future residence is likely around this property?
I think so. I guess to the east, there's another parcel owned by the city of Moab that I don't know what their plans are for it, but it's not it's separate from the sewer treatment plant.
Trish?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the alternative dwelling overlay ADO for Grand County parcel number 03-0002-0087 and associated master plan and development agreement with the following conditions. One, development is limited to 28 ADO dwelling sites as designed on the approved master plan dated 02-09-2023. And two, the owner shall record the development agreement in the real property records of Grand County simultaneously with this ordinance and prior to application for further site plan construction or development approvals. Oh, do you want me to do a finding? Yeah, I would agree. Compatibility with existing community characteristics, existing density or future land use designation. Sure.
Thanks, Trish.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Hedin and second by Commissioner McGann. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And the motion passes unanimously.
And if Brian's listening, I do want to thank him for being so involved throughout the entire ADO process, because he was.
Yeah, Brian kind of kicked this whole thing off, actually.
This was development.
Right. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 6, ordinance to approve a request to rezone parcel number 02-0017-0026 at 2380 South Highway 191, Moab, Utah, to designate the alternative dwelling overlay. And Jenna again.
This application is for 2380 Highway 191 for Daniel Stott. 02-0017-0026. This ADO application proposes 13 site alternative dwelling community along with associated parking at this address. The proposed sites are situated again around a circular driveway, providing access to Highway 191, and like any other developments, that access would have to be approved by UDOT. The subject property is 4.78 acres and is located within the preferred highway commercial zoning district with a very small portion of rural residential to the rear. The property is bounded by the highway to the east and Silt land to the west, and other HC zoned properties are located to the north and south, thus eliminating the need for screening per the land use code section 6.10. Existing development to the rear of the property, you would see kind of grayed out there, was approved on February 20th, 2018, when the County Council passed Resolution 3133, and it approved a conditional use permit for the development of 28 overnight RV dwelling sites that consisted of 17 cabins and 11 RV sites. The current ADO application proposes an additional 13 full hookup RV sites, averaging 1,000 square feet. The sites averaging 1,000 square feet to be constructed at that front portion of the property that was not previously planned for development. Landscaping at the site is proposed to meet the requirements with enhancements of the plantings that exist on the property. Drainage needs are proposed to be met with the addition of a bioswale at the front of the property and a stormwater detention basin that would of course be reviewed and approved by the county engineer prior to construction. Overall, the proposal meets the design standards of land use code 4.9, and any site approvals would occur during that site plan application.
Great, thanks, Jenna. Any questions for Jenna? Mary?
I'll make a motion. I approve the alternative dwelling overlay for the Grand County parcel number 02-0017-0026 and associated master planning and development agreement with the following conditions. Development is limited to 13 ADO dwelling sites as designated in the approved master plan. The owner shall record the development agreement in the real property records of the Grand County simultaneous with this ordinance and prior to applications for further site plan constructions or development. I make this motion with the finding that it is compatible with existing community characteristics, existing density, or future land use designation.
Thanks, Mary.
Second.
All right, thanks, Mike. I have a motion on the table, Commissioner McGann, and a second by Commissioner McCurdy. Any other discussion on this?
Just a comment. So I think because of the history of how this parcel developed, all the short-term spots are in the back, further from the highway, and the long-term spots are very close to the highway. I hope, if maybe the owner wanted to swap some of those around in the future, I hope we would try to facilitate that. So
that's a good point.
That is a good point.
And Dan also has been part of this process. I know he came to a couple of the workshops and was very helpful with when we were talking about the original ADO. So kudos to Dan there. Also, while we're on this, I think to my math, if we pass this one, I think we're up to 77 that we've passed. Is that right? So we'd be looking at having an additional 73 potentially going forward. Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. All right. Thank you, Jenna. See you next meeting. All right, we're on to agenda item number 7. Thank you. Agenda item number 7, ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 8.16 special events of the Grant County General Ordinances and related ordinance number 667. Mallory Nassau, Commission Administrator.
Never gets old, does it? So what is before you is a proposed amendment to the special event ordinance that I think addresses some of the prior conversations while also maintaining kind of the philosophy or various special event ideals that we know that the past commission or the majority commission has expressed an interest in maintaining. So I'll run through a quick list that's in the agenda summary of what those amendments would address. The first would be the special event advisory committee membership. I know it was discussed in the last conversation about this, about kind of the purpose and role of the committee. And really, if the other parts of the ordinance are functioning properly, the role should be very minimal, and it should be that determination of high or low impact. And really, it should be very, very few applications where that isn't clear. So I do think that that's something that makes sense to consolidate it and to drop down the list. I know Gabe was thankful to see his name crossed off in the proposed draft. And Stephen was disappointed to not see it. The other changes, let's see, is there were some details that we were asking in the intent to apply that really weren't essential or useful in determining the impact level. So asking things that really upfront, it's like, but who knows this stuff? And those are details that event sponsors would want to get into only if they knew that they could proceed. So we didn't want people to continue spending time and energy on information that it might not make a difference, and that would have to be sorted out later on. And then we did add a few things in there, but they are just to get at some of the requirements of, what makes it high or low. So we weren't asking anything before about public safety. So the question now, I think, is something like if there are added impacts known to public safety resources. But one thing you'll also see in the intent to apply requirements is some verbiage making it clear that it's only if they're relevant, because I know we've had people in the past also ask questions of like, why do I need to do an impact mitigation for this? Like, well, you don't really. That doesn't fit with your event and isn't required by a referral agency. So just trying to cut out some of those things and make it clear that there is a little discretion, and that just because it's on that list doesn't necessarily mean you have to provide that information if it's not relevant. Another example of that would be with site plans. So some events, say you were at OSTA and you're asked about the setup, a lot of that is already in place. So there might be some things you have to put together, but that like a start line, finish line, those aren't relevant. So just trying to make it very clear that we want some human element of this. Let's see. We also put in there just little deadlines for referral agencies, the committee, and the special event coordinator to review. And in the past ordinance, what we had was specific to referral agencies, where it required a 5-day turnaround, business day turnaround. And then it was assumed that they did not have any issues with the event moving forward. So we've kind of gone back to some of those deadlines where if people haven't replied by a certain time, unless they are crucial to the event or it's a significant resource impact for them, we could have the application go forward. So those are just meant to be timely and move things along. Let's see, the next thing you'll hopefully see throughout is really some discretion. So there's things like the complete deadlines or complete application submissions. We've had a few instances where somebody hasn't gotten something and it's 5 days past the deadline. Don't tell anybody, but we've usually been a little flexible with that. So this does allow for the reality of this isn't a big deal. The event is 90% of the way done. Everybody knows that it's going to happen. Let's be able to work with people a little more and kind of less of a too late. And this would be for a complete application specifically. So their ITA would have already been approved. It's just documents required. Another thing we changed was for the complete application, it's proposed to go from 60 days to 30 days for high impact. And the reasoning for that is the intent to apply would have already been approved. So really at that point, does it differ from low impact really? I don't think so. I think 30 days for both applications being complete is reasonable. And I hope you'll agree with that. And then it also added some verbiage for high impact intent to apply. I know it came up at the last quarterly review. I think Kevin mentioned the question or brought it up of when events could come before the commission. So right now they can't apply more than a year in advance, but then to be able to go to the commission at a prior quarterly review than what would be their designated quarterly review based on their event date. This is just something we wanted to have available with the intention of more legacy events or established events, being able to utilize that. And it would give you all the discretion where you could say, yeah, we want to go ahead and approve this right now. Or you could say, we're not sure. We want to wait and make that decision until your regularly scheduled date. It's weird with the dates in this one. So with that being said, and to finish rambling, I'd ask what questions you all have and what information I can provide.
Thank you.
And if no one has questions, I can throw in a little bit more too.
Yeah, go ahead right now, Stephen.
if you guys have looked through the membership, we have slimmed down to continuing to have the county attorney, commission administrator, economic development director, and the Old Spanish Trail Arena. These are 4 individuals that are going to be very engaged with it. One of the things that we didn't touch that I raised previously is whether the commission would want to grant any type of discretion to those 4 individuals in looking at high impact, low impact events. The reason why I bring it up is because you're looking at myself, the county administrator, economic development director, and the Spanish Trail Arena director. If it was unanimous or required all of them consent, we may have an applicant that comes forward with 265 people. Maybe they didn't go through and read the ordinance and see that the cutoff was at 250, would make a completely different project. I don't raise that advocating for one position or the other. I just state that that could help expedite some of those kind of borderline cases. The language that you have before you today does not include any discretion whatsoever. I want to make that clear. But if that was something that you guys wanted to consider, it's really unlikely that Mallory, myself, August Granith, and Angie Book are all going to agree to sneak in 1,000-person event as low impact. But hey, maybe not roll the dice. We'll see. But that's one thing for you guys to look at if discretion is anything you guys would like to do. We now have a lot cleaner timeframes, and that's been very, very helpful for staff and for agencies. I think that's going to be really important. And then the discretion to allow Mallory to stay within the intent of the ordinance. It's not great to go outside of the kind of the spectrum. The norm should be within the deadlines. But if we have a workaround to allow other applicants or other documents to come in later, it's a setup system and it's cleaner that way. So I've gone through it with Mallory. I really appreciate her putting everything on there, even though my name's still included on the list on the committee.
For now, next time.
Thanks, Stephen.
It does say and or designee, doesn't it?
Very fair.
All right, any questions for Mallory or Stephen? No, Kevin?
So I'll make a motion. I move to repeal chapter 816 special events of the Grand County General Ordinances and related ordinance number 667 and adopt new chapter 816 as set forth in the attached ordinance and its exhibit A.
Thank you, Kevin.
Second.
All right, I have a motion on the table by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Winfield. Any further discussion?
Is there a way that in the motion we could capture some of that discretionary stuff about the borderline? Or is that?
So you would have to amend one of the specific portions of the ordinance requires that a low impact event has all of the characteristics listed in the 4 categories. And I've closed it, but I'll bring it back up. But those were the numbers. We would have to change that section that it says it must meet all of those things.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to have more thought and discussion about that. And so I imagine we're going to be revising the special ordinance. We usually do it about 2 or 3 times a year in the past few years. So there'll be a chance to consider that later, maybe. But
any other discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. And thanks for working on that, Mallory. I think hopefully that'll go some way towards streamlining the processes for special events, folks.
If not, we'll bring it back.
Right, of course.
Now we get it right.
Yeah, getting it right. Move on to item number 8, ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance number 472 and establishing a process for adopting and amending bylaws. And back to Mallory.
All right. I was gonna see if Alicia wanted to do it because she did really a bulk of the work. So thank you. And this is for the ordinance, correct?
Yes, for the ordinance.
So this item came before you at the last meeting along with the resolution that follows. And we postponed both because of the question with the special service districts and compensation. So this one did not have any changes. But we just did it to make sure that we weren't gonna have any issues in there that we weren't aware of and to make sure they tied together nicely. So this hopefully is fairly clear cut with just an updated direction for folks with drafting their bylaws.
Yes, and I did, you had an email question about it, and this isn't impacting those particular boards with those special.
Yes. Yeah, and that was the trail mix and the motorized truck. Yeah, great. All right. Yes, Kevin?
So I move to approve the ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance number 472 boards and bylaw process.
I second.
All right, I have a
You haven't
motion on the table from Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner McGann. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand, and that passes unanimously. And on to agenda item number 9, resolution repealing and replacing resolution number 3184 and approving the board appointment process and requirements. Mallory.
Okay, this is the one that triggered the prior one to be postponed also. And you'll see in the updated red line, we pulled out the section that spoke to special service districts. So that is completely removed, and we think it still covers everything effectively. So there isn't much to that. And the question, I think you said, tell folks, was about trail mix and just their process, but they are a unique one because they aren't appointed by the commission. So this wouldn't affect any board or committee that isn't appointed by the commission.
Great, thank you. Kevin?
I think Mary had her hand up first.
Okay, Mary, you can make the motion.
I move to approve the resolution repealing and replacing resolution number 3184 and adopting the board appointment process and requirements.
Thank you. All right, got a motion on the table by Commissioner McGann, a second by Commissioner McCurdy. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. And that passes unanimously.
And can I quickly just thank Alicia for moving that forward? She does a great job taking initiative and getting stuff done and often prompting me. Thank you.
Hey, Stephen, really quick, are you in the position of winning right now? Do you need me to delay? What do you need from me right now? As far as time?
Oh, I've already lost. Can't wait. I guessed 6:48. I missed it by an hour.
It's 6:48 right now, Stephen.
Oh, I just need a motion to adjourn. No, wait.
Interesting timing there. All right, we're on to our consent agenda. Approval of consent agenda.
Before we start, are some of these items?
Yeah, there's
left out?
we're gonna have to postpone too, so I'll just read through them, and I think the cleanest thing would be to just read through the whole thing, and then someone can make a motion to. Or what do you?
I thought it'd be easier just to read the ones that we do want to approve and be silent on the others. Just whatever.
Does that work, Stu?
Is I think it D and E. The
Good.
band contracts.
We don't have to actually postpone those.
I think if we don't act, then they're effectively postponed.
Sure.
Okay, sounds great. All right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so our consent agenda then will consist of agenda item A, ratification of SB 3, state funding for flood mitigation, ratification of chair signature on TC-62 LG sales tax data request forms, agenda item C, Grand County 2023 4th of July fireworks display independent contractor agreement, agenda item F, Sandbar Lounge Tavern liquor permit, local consent. Item G, ratifying letter of support for Castle Valley 2023 and 2024 groundwater water budget study, non-point source grant application. And finally, agenda item H, ratifying the Old Spanish Trail Arena Pickleball and Playground LWCF grant application. And just to clarify for those folks who saw the agenda, I did not mention agenda items D and E, which were contracts for bands that would potentially play at the Grant County Fair. Those aren't ready yet.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thanks, Trish. All right, I have a motion on the table by Commissioner Hedin and a second by Commissioner Winfield to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, raise your hands. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. All right, we are on to, I have a public hearing here and I saw Ben come in. So I would like to open the second public hearing for the CDBG grant program. This public hearing is for the purpose of allowing all citizens to provide input concerning the project that was awarded to Grant County under the 2023 Community Block Grant Program. The application was for the application for funds was applied for a project located at the Arroyo Crossing subdivision for the development of water and sewer infrastructure on Tract E. The project manager for this project is the Housing Authority of Southeastern Utah. The CDBG application was successful in the original rating and ranking process, and the Arroyo Crossing Tract E townhome project was awarded $337,063 in the state of Utah. The total project cost will be approximately $419,063. This project will consist of water and sewer infrastructure for Tract E, an undeveloped 1.6 acre piece of land at the Arroyo Crossing subdivision. Water and sewer installation, including irrigation lines, will include service to each lot from the existing water and sewer main lines. The installation of this will facilitate the construction of 26 affordable townhomes. The commissioner asks for any questions, comments, or concerns from the audience. Are there any questions or concerns from anybody here in the chambers? Is there anybody on Zoom who has come to make public comment about this public hearing about the CDBG grant? It doesn't look like it. Commissioners? All good? All right. Then do I close the public hearing now?
Or should we have?
Or do I leave it open until?
Or should we have a motion to?
I do have to close it now. Okay. Yeah, you did. It says the hearing was adjourned at. Okay. All right. Seeing no public comment or commissioner comment, I will adjourn this hearing at 6:54 on May 2nd. Thanks, everybody. All right. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Evan?
Oh. I was thanking Hasu for attending the
Thank you, guys.
intense hearing, but yes, I would make a motion to go into closed session to discuss real estate. So
To discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property?
yes,
Perhaps.
yeah,
Excellent.
that box. We're gonna check that box.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All in favor of going into closed hearing? Closed session. Thank you. All right, we're going into closed session.